here too.
Welcome to the Ojai Unified School District Board meeting. It's great to have you here. And if you could stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'd like to welcome all those who are with us here in our boardroom and all those who are watching us from afar. I would like to, as far as I know, there are no emergency additions or modifications to the agenda.
There is none.
So we would ask for a vote on approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve it.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None? And then approval of the minutes from our meeting of June 2nd.
I'll move to approve.
Right, thanks.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We've had so many meetings that that was June 2nd.
Just a regular meeting.
Our regular meeting, which was about 3 meetings ago. So. Great, and then we will, normally we have a student representative report, but our students have the summer off, so yay for them. All right, and it's time for public comments. We'd like to welcome Angie Janassi.
Hi, and happy summer. Tonight, I just wanted to touch base with all of you on the eve of my first term as president of OFT. I'm looking forward to attending next year's school board meetings and working with each of you as much as possible to help make our district even better for the students and my colleagues. I've been encouraged from the school board meetings that I've already attended and by our discussions throughout the year in which you've demonstrated your thoughtfulness, consideration, and respect in your leadership of our district. While I'm pleased that we have come to an agreement and that you're poised to approve that, that did provide my colleagues with a complete instructional school year, a bonus, and a raise, I think it's important to remember that we still have a long way to go to achieve parity with the other districts in the county. OFT is inspired to work through the summer and throughout next school year to continue to build on our beginning success together.
Great, thank you, and we look forward to working with you. Great. And let Sacramento know some of that, too.
Don't worry, I spoke to all those people last week.
Fantastic. All right, and now for our first special presentation on our school facilities. And Hank, do you want to describe that for us?
I sure will. Just to provide a little bit of historical context, this board formed itself throughout most of the December 2014 meeting, and we were all committed starting then as soon as possible to have a full conversation about some of the key challenges that would be facing the district in 2015-16 and thereafter. And you'll recall that we had quite a broad discussion at the March 11th board meeting that Thane led, where we went around the table and asked each of the 5 board members to comment on a variety of issues, a couple of which are particularly pertinent to tonight. Specifically, the question of taking a hard look at our school facilities, that is capacity, particularly the 5 elementary schools, and to a certain extent, almost as important, Matilla Junior High, to a lesser extent in importance, the high school, North High School, Chaparral, this area here. We pretty much know what the last 3 of those look like in terms of space and opportunities. From that March 11th board meeting, I worked with a number of my colleagues around the county to find out which groups with whom they have worked have been very successful in helping them learn about their capacities and opportunities for same use of space or different use of space. And from that analysis, the Leica group rose to the top. I contacted them, talked with them. I was very impressed. I brought to the board at the April board meeting the recommendation to appoint the Delinquent Group to do a two-phase study. The part that we're looking at tonight on school facilities capacity, and also the section that we're going to be looking at the August 18th meeting on enrollment projections. We have one of the two members of the team who came to us from the Delinquent Group here tonight, Larry Furchow. You can see his title, Senior Director of the Delinquent Group in Irvine, California. His colleague, Brett McFadden, who has a business services background, CBO background, is on a family trip, as I recall, Larry. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Which we did. We told him not to cancel. So we'll see Brett at the August 18th meeting. He'll be presenting the demographic study. So I welcome Larry. I found him to be very responsive. This is certainly not, as they say, his first rodeo on school facilities. So to a certain extent, the document that he produced for us, which the board has received about a copy of, and one copy is in the back, and also the PowerPoint tonight, which is essentially the same as the major part of that document, plus one page that I thought was important to add. That's why Larry's here tonight, to review his findings with us, to get us started thinking about this very important challenge that we have. The second half of the commitment that the board made was to create a 7-Eleven committee to take a look at those elementary school sites, all of them, potentially look at Matilla again, although that may not be on the agenda, but certainly the 5 elementary school sites. And so we all felt that having these data along with the enrollment projections would be an excellent forerunner to the study that group would undertake. And so I'll be coming back to the board at the August 18th meeting to have them start to think about how to form that 7-Eleven committee. My hope is that it could be formed no later than September, possibly October, but certainly in the early fall. So, Larry, welcome. I know you were happy to be first on the agenda. Right? That doesn't always happen to you.
No,
I've been in your role. I always appreciate it when I get on before about 9 o'clock. So, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Bangser, members of the board. Larry Furchow with the Delinquent Group. I have a brief presentation to go through, but feel free to jump in, ask me any questions as we go through. What this is a summary of our field visits to your sites in mid-May, when we visited all 8 school sites in a day, got a tour of the lay of the land, and have an understanding of the capacities of the schools. What you'll see as we go through this process is identifying the capacities of a school is a little more art than science. It's not as simple as this is the number of classrooms, this is how many kids go in a classroom, how many students go in a classroom, this is the capacity. There's a whole host of programs that happen in a school facility that are not your standard instructional program. And so for that reason, we've created a range or option of capacities for each of the school sites to reflect not just your current usage and loading standards, but your potential future loading standards under the local control funding formula, as well as a maximum capacity, recognizing that enrollment has declined in the district. And when that happens, classroom spaces get used for other things. They get used for storage, they get used for pull-out programs, they get used for after-school programs. And to the extent that you see growth again or change the use of facilities, those uses may change again to regular education. And so that's why we identified a maximum capacity. If you were to take back all of those pull-out and after-school spaces, what might the capacity of the facility look like? And then we also identified an adjusted maximum capacity. This is just at the elementary schools and for the 3 larger elementary schools, Miramonte, Miners Oaks, and Topa Topa, where we said that up to 5 of the pull-out or after-school uses could remain, but anything above those 5 would be used for regular education. So you'll see 4 capacities potentially at each school facility at the elementary school level to give a range of what the available space could look like there. This methodology page is from the report, and it has a whole bunch of disclaimers. It's like when you're buying a car, to provide some of those insights as to how we identify classrooms. If a classroom space is being used as a school office, a library, a computer lab, we didn't count that as a teaching station. That's something that's going to remain part of the district's program. But if it's being used as storage or vacant, or if there's a pull-out program, we've noted that in the report. In terms of the different loading standards. So once we've identified what's going on in each teaching station, then we've identified a loading standard. And in those scenarios, we have the 14-15 program capacity, which reflects your 14-15 loading standards based on your practice this past school year. And what you'll notice is that if it was a pull-out or after-school use, we didn't put students in that classroom. It was left alone as a pull-out space.
I think there's so much jargon in here. Sure. We need to kind of slow it down, especially for me and maybe some other people who are trying to follow. When you say loading standards, what you're saying is, what did we do last year with our classrooms, right?
How many students per classroom per day are put into a classroom?
Got it.
And that's generally based on your agreement with your bargaining unit for teachers, based on how many students that you would have in a classroom. So that's where our loading standards refer to. And you'll see the next column over goes through the LCFF program capacity, so the local control funding formula. At full implementation of the class size reduction at TK through 3, grades transitional kindergarten through 3, you would have 24 students as opposed to the current 30 students per classroom. 28 students is the goal for the district on grades 4 through 6. Grades 7 through 12 don't change, so that's 33 students. 12 students in special education. Again, pull-out or after-school uses we left vacant. We did not add students to those rooms to reflect capacity. Anything that's vacant or storage space was loaded under both these program capacities to reflect that if more students come into the district, vacant classrooms are obviously the first ones you're going to put students into. That's the easiest low-hanging fruit to go after. Then you have to go after the pull-out and other spaces to add additional capacity. The max.
Just ask a quick question about the LCFF, Hank. So I know that's a goal, but there used to be sort of penalties for not having more than 20. Is this similar to that, or have they now just sort of said?
Eventually it will be. Right now the statement is, I would call it advisory. Okay? And again, another example of what I was talking about in the newspaper a couple of days ago. Our teachers union has worked with us every year to create understandings of sort of what we call reality and hope. And so our realities are that the class sizes are bigger than we want. We all know that. They're smaller in many cases in the left-hand column, in some cases not. And in fact, Angie and I talked the last day or two of school that we're going to get back together again in mid-August and take a look at all the numbers and make sure that we continue to talk exactly the same about what we would hope to have, but in fact what we do have. So we're going to avoid penalties at all costs. There might be a couple of additional payments to faculty members where we're not able to get down to a limit that we've agreed to, and that's something that's in our contract already.
And if I can, sure. Sorry for interrupting, but when I first got this report, for the life of me, I was so confused because my intuitive understanding of the term capacity is the one that you see from the fire chief that says maximum capacity 250 people. So, when I read maximum capacity, my thought is, wow, why is our maximum capacity less than our LCFF or our 2014? The answer is that what we're really saying is how many kids are we going to have per room if we used all rooms, right? So the reason why maximum capacity is actually less kids per room than, for example, 2014-15 is because you might take back into circulation as a classroom a room that's currently being used as storage.
Correct. The maximum capacity loading standards, or number of kids per classroom, we use based on the state loading standards under the school facilities program, which is a little bit lower than the district's programmatic loading standards, but fairly in line. 24 to 28 is what your LCFF would be, 25 being the state maximum. So it's within range there. And then grades 7 through 12, it's 27 students per classroom versus 33. But we'll talk a little bit later about a utilization factor that goes into the middle and high school, or the junior high school and high school capacities. But as you'll see, the big difference between the first two capacities and the last one is the loading, or the filling, if you will, of the pull-out or after-school uses. Taking back classrooms that may be used for other things programmatically and making those regular education classrooms to see how much additional space there is. With that, we can look then at the first school that we've alphabetically put into the presentation. For each of the schools, we've taken an aerial map, we've overlaid the school map, tried to divide the buildings as close to possible. Again, these are not exactly to scale in terms of the classroom sizes. We're not architects. We just play them on TV sometimes. So Miners Oaks, we identified 26 teaching stations, and you can see the usage is there. The largest group being pull-out or after-school uses. So there's 10 classrooms that are being used as pull-out or after-school uses. 6 for grades TK through 3, 5 for grades 4 through 6, 2 special education, and 3 vacant or storage. And you can see, based on the maps, they're color-coded, so you can identify where those are on the campus. That light blue color is indication that those aren't teaching stations. So you can see the library, the multi-purpose room, the kitchen, the office spaces, for example, are not considered teaching stations. So just anything in that green, yellowish, pinkish, purplish colors are the teaching stations that we loaded. And so based on that, you can see that looking at the program capacity for 14-15, the capacity would have been 460 students. As you transition to full implementation of the local control funding formula and the reduced class sizes, that capacity will go down to 392 students, assuming the exact same usages of the classroom spaces. Under a maximum capacity, if we took every classroom and teaching stations, so all 26 teaching stations, and loaded them based on the state loading standards of 25 for regular education and 12 for special education, we'd be at 624 students. But recognizing that it's not realistic to occupy every classroom space for regular education. There are intervention rooms that are needed, there's RSP that's needed, there's other programs, there's music, there's art that need those spaces. We identified with the superintendent's direction 5, up to 5, again, classroom spaces that could be reserved as non-loaded. And so that reduces the capacity from 624 maximum to an adjusted maximum of 499 students.
Just to addend that, as you see in the report, when we met with Brett and Larry in an interim sort of look at a draft of this final document, that was when I said, look, you know, the column that has maximum capacity is just so much larger than the number that now exists. And in Miners Oaks case, it's about twice the number of students that are presently there. And so to put back to realism, to put a more realistic look at the elementary schools, the 3 large schools that had 10 or almost 10 and 5 of these available spaces to use, I said, let's just take a look at one more column. And so I called it, I guess we ended up calling it the adjusted maximum, which it was to retain, as you can see, 5 times 25 in the right-hand column, 125 student places for programs. And so I just felt, knowing how schools work, you don't fill up every space. And I wanted to give a little bit more realistic view. It turned out to be 125 students less than the absolute maximum. But still, 500 students compared to about 300. We have about 300 students in Miners Oaks.
Yeah, do we have those numbers, Andy?
Sure, yeah, they're actually...
Miners Oaks, it's 281 next year.
That's right, next year 281. But this year, if you go back, I guess still this year, this is the last day of this year. If you go to page 9, those numbers are there. So you can see it's the numbers in the right-hand column. And so this year, and that includes all students, 314 at Miners Oaks, 368 at Miramont, 151 San Antonio, 38 Summit, 495. So you can see there's about 200 students at Miners Oaks. Even with the 200 with the adjusted number, that's keeping 5 classrooms open. Right? Go ahead, Larry.
Sure. Any other questions? That's all. I just spent a little bit of time on Miners Oaks because that was the first one we were looking at, but when you look at Miramonte, there's one additional teaching station at Miramonte, so it's 27 as opposed to 26. And you can see the range of capacities there from the lowest at 444 under the full implementation of the local control funding formula, 528 based on this past school years or the current school years by today's date. Number of students per classroom, maximum capacity of 636, And then when we reduce 5 classrooms and keep those reserved for programs, brings the capacity to 511 students. And again, this past school year, there were 368 students as of the CVED's date at that school. So 150 student roughly additional space there. San Antonio and Summit, we'll go through those next.
Hey, could I just ask a quick question? Do we know how many of these rooms are full currently in each school? I mean, I know in my house, it doesn't matter how much junk I have, I fill up all the rooms.
That's called Parkinson's law.
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
Yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, it really, well, I can give you the number of regular classroom teachers this year. That's regular classroom teachers. 10 at Miners Oaks, 12 at Miramati, 16 at Topatopa, 5 at San Antonio, and 2 at Summit. Now, there are other, as Larry said, when they went around and did their site visits, they found various kinds of uses for special education, for art, etc. But the number of classrooms in the first 2 rows are a little higher than the number of classrooms we talked about. And so there are 15 classrooms presently assigned to TK through 6, but there aren't 15 teachers this year.
Right, I'm
12.
just wondering if there are rooms that we're just not using for any purpose.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Sure, I mean, there's at least one room at Miramonte that's identified as vacant or storage. That's room 25 on the map. That's
Okay, right, and 3 at Miners Oaks. I guess it's a big difference whether it is vacant or storage.
Yes, and I know at Miners Oaks, 2 of those are storage and 1 of those is completely vacant. But these are, when we say storage, it's extra furniture or books that, if push came to shove, could be stored elsewhere within the district to free that.
I'm just talking about not pushing or shoving.
Well, maybe I actually, because, when Jack started at Topatopa, there was 22 teachers, and when he left, I think there was 17. So those classrooms, what they used to do for the pullout, when he was first year, they still were doing pullouts, but 3 pullout teachers would use 1 room. They each had a little table and they'd have their front.
Now we have
And
lots of
now
rooms.
they each have their own room, so it's sort of like they're in use, but there was never a problem with 3 pullout teachers using a large classroom. And then I do know, like, one of the next year when there was 1 less classroom, they sort of said, well, the PTA could actually store some things that were in my garage, so you do sort of spread out because it's convenient, but when there was 22 teachers, I never felt like there's no room at Topatopa. And I'm sure there were, because I think that at one point Topatopa was at 590 and it was only at
I'm sure.
500 or 4 something when Jack was there, so.
I just, what I'm trying to understand is I think some people have an impression that there are just vacant rooms sitting around all over the place. And yes, we could use them more efficiently, but no, there probably aren't that many rooms that are vacant and not being used. I mean, in the first 2 schools, we've identified 1 that's not being used at all.
Well, the bigger number by far, the numbers are 3 and 1. In the bottom row, there aren't any. But the combination of Miners Oaks and Miramati, there are 18 rooms that they identified as pull out or after school.
Right.
And that sort of gets back to what James was talking about, that you use space that's available to you as much as you possibly can. And so there are 10 classrooms, say with Miners Oaks, there are 10 classrooms that are in some form being used, but how much of the day and for what purpose, those are the kind of things that we would look into at a further point in the analysis. And that was why I said, let's just not put all 10 there as available, let's just take half. So that was why that last column.
Just in terms of methodology, 1, pull out, we're talking about situations where there's a class of kids and someone comes to teach a subgroup of them, and so brings them off, like, a differential in math ability or something, someone brings them off, and so that's a pull out, right?
Yes.
And the other thing, methodology-wise, is did you just assume that any room that didn't have storage and was otherwise vacant was a pull-out / after school, or did you actually determine that they were in fact used as pull-out / after school?
we walk all the sites with either the principal or somebody knowledgeable about the program. So if it wasn't readily apparent to us based on what was on the walls that it was a second grade classroom, we were told, oh, this is the art classroom. One of the schools had an art classroom because it's easier to make one room dirty as opposed to 15 rooms dirty with art programs, or this is the lunch club, or whatever use is going on. So the pull-out rooms aren't necessarily just those intervention type rooms. They're also art, music, PE rooms at the elementary school level that are being used. You take kids out of their regular education classroom, maybe as a whole class.
Thanks.
Linda, that would be fun dirty.
Oh, yes. It's not dirty, it's creative.
The custodian used the word dirt.
I think I need to talk to him.
So that takes the list.
San Antonio?
San Antonio, thank you very much. 7 teaching stations at San Antonio. Total capacity in between 132 students at the lowest end to 175 students at the highest end. And this year's school year, there were 151 students at San Antonio. So you can see it falls right within line with the 14-15 program capacity there. So the 2 smaller schools were the easiest of the 2 to walk and do the capacity for. You can see the Summit with a total of 4 teaching stations that were identified, and a capacity between 52 at full implementation of the smaller class sizes and up to 100 students. If you could find them at that particular facility. There were 38 students, or 38 students at Summit this year. And then Topa with 25 classrooms, so the same number of classrooms roughly, as does the other 2 elementary schools. So between 580 students based on how the classrooms were loaded this school year, down to 474 under that adjusted maximum capacity. You can see there are no, under the adjusted maximum capacity, they don't have any additional capacity on the pull-out or after-school uses because they are at the 5 currently allowed, so there's no growth opportunity there. But as the board's been discussing, are there classrooms that used to be used for regular education? Yes, and that's a discussion that can be had as well. You can see how that facility is being used on this map as well. And this year there were 495 students, which actually takes us to the next slide.
So just let me take one breath on this one. On page 8, so that's interesting sort of analysis that Kevin got us thinking about. The reason I put that last column in, so if in fact, let's just say hypothetically, we had 25 students in all grades, TK through 6, then they have your special education groups. And if in fact you wanted to retain 5 classrooms for some kinds of program, ball-out, et cetera, then we actually would be at capacity now. Now that presumes much lower class size and 5 classrooms available for those purposes. So I think our whole point in trying to show you this is this whole idea of capacity and program, housing, et cetera, class size, it's very much of a flexible, interrelated kind of thing. Right?
Yeah, and you're basing that off this year. I mean, next year we only have 440.
Exactly. Well, right.
So-
Exactly. Right. This year we would have been tough. Well, that's with 5 classrooms, but we also had high class sizes, so we get plenty of room at Topa. So you're right. Next year, 440. Absolutely.
And I think that's a good point, that the capacities that we're identifying really are dependent on the educational program. So the maximum capacity is if you really filled up the school to the gills, so to speak. But your educational program is going to pull that back to a degree based on how you want to function as a school district and what kind of programs you want to offer beyond just the traditional education program. The next sheet just summarizes the enrollment at each of the schools. I think this is something that Dr. Bengter shared with the board and community as well. But when you go across, you can see what the school of attendance enrollment was for each of those schools as of CBEDS. That's the number of kids in the seats at those schools. So again, we talked minor zones, 314 students in the seats. And if you go down those columns, that reflects the number of students coming from the different attendance boundaries and where they're going. So Miners Oaks, if you go down the Miners Oaks column, you can see there's 392 students in the Miners Oaks attendance boundary, 257 of whom went to Miners Oaks, 62 to Miramonte, 27 to San Antonio, 1 made the drive up to Summit, and 45 to Topa Topa. So you can see how that breaks out by attendance boundary. And then you can see the last column before the totals is the incoming inter-district transfer students, so the students coming from outside the district and where they're attending schools, and how that breaks out. There's some interesting trends when you look at this, and when we present the enrollment projection and demographic report in August, we'll talk more about this, but a school like Miners Oaks, almost 82% of their enrollment comes from within the boundary, but however, 35% of their enrollment in the boundary goes to other schools. So what that tells you is it doesn't bring in as many of the transfer students, both from outside the district and within the district, as other schools. Where Topa Topa, for example, 71.3% of the students that attend the school reside within the boundary, and a total of 82% of the Topa Topa resident students attend Topa Topa. So more of the Topa Topa students stay at Topa Topa as a percentage of the enrollment. But as you look at capacity.
Sure.
I'd love to see those percentages.
Yep.
That's very
I
interesting.
didn't take Common Core math, but I could
You can do it. I can do it. You can do it. I will get you that on Friday. You bet.
Common Core math probably would have made that harder. Estimated.
We need to work as a group.
I think that's really interesting too, because you see, like, it's just it's fascinating what choice does, because you can see, 40 kids in the Topa Topa district choose to go to San Antonio, and 32, and 32 kids in the San Antonio district choose to go to Topa Topa. It's almost, half and half. They go in opposite directions.
So when you're looking at facilities, you can look, first you want to look at where the kids are attending, but you also want to look to make sure you have the facilities capacity where the students reside. So you want to kind of look at it from both sides of the equation, and this kind of information is helpful in that. As Dr. Benzer mentioned, we also looked at the junior high school and high school facilities as well. So with Matilaha Junior High School, 25 teaching stations there, and how they've been categorized. 17 of them are in grades 7 through 8, 3 special education, 1 pull-out after-school use, and then there are 4 vacant or storage classrooms at that facility. Those are the pinkish color that you can see. A little bit different at the junior high school and high school levels, because a teacher teaches, say, 5 periods, there's 6 periods out of the day. So while there might be assigned 33 students per period, the effective capacity of a classroom is 5/6 of that 33 students, or 83%, which translates to about 27 students per classroom on that calculation. So because a classroom is vacant for 1 period a day, where a teacher is doing preparation, that reduces the capacity. Obviously, in districts that are growing and don't have the ability to add classrooms, they have to have roving teachers, or they don't have assigned classrooms, so that they can get that utilization factor up to 100%, or there's different ways of doing the scheduling to increase the utilization factor, so that all the classrooms are being used all periods of the day, so that you're at that 33 students per classroom peak enrollment at all times. And the other thing about the junior high school and high schools is adding back in the physical education. There's facilities to house those students when they're in PE, so we just assume at the junior high school level, everybody's required to take 2 years of physical education, so take the enrollment of the school and divide it by the number of periods that PE is taught, and add that to the capacity. So that in 14-15, the program capacity was 709 students, and the maximum capacity is 721 students, which is quite a bit higher than the current enrollment at the junior high school. So some space to grow into. Similarly, at the high school level, a total of 57 classrooms identified, or teaching stations identified. You can see the map there gets a little harder to see with just the number of classrooms that we have to carve out there. And based on the two different loading standards, a capacity of between 1,300 and just under 1,600 students. And PE is a little bit different at the high school level because they're only required to take 2 years of PE, not 4 years. Junior high school, we have all years. So between 1,300 and 1,600 students is the capacity identified for Nordhoff High School. And for Chaparral, with 7 teaching stations, a capacity of between 130 and 190 students roughly identified. So that's the end of this presentation. Again, we'll come back with more information on enrollment to provide additional information to the district as it looks to form its 7-11 committee and further study the facilities and educational programs related to facilities. But I'm happy to take any more questions or provide any other clarification.
Could you help me understand utilization factor with respect to Nordhoff and Matilda?
Sure. So with Matilda, the 14-15 program capacity at 729 students, 729 students, that's when the classrooms are loaded at 33 students per classroom. So that would assume that each teacher is teaching 6 periods with 33 kids in the seats each of those 6 periods. But we know that there's, contractually they only teach 5 periods out of the 6, and they have prep period where the classroom is not loaded with students. There's no students brought into those classrooms during the prep period. So there's really 1 period out of the day where the classroom's empty. So the effective capacity of that classroom is 5/6 of 33.
Which is 83.33%.
83.33%.
Okay, yeah, I get it. So you're basically this is not something derived from your observations. This is the factor that you utilize based on the logic you just gave me.
Yeah, it's the factor utilized in districts that have
Got it.
prep periods without roving teachers.
Got it.
When we have experts, I kind of like to ask the question, how do we look compared to other districts? What kind of insights do you have from doing this in a lot of different places? Our experience is here and where we went to school, and so it's limited compared to what you have. So I would just wonder what you can tell us that would be helpful for us to know. The numbers are useful, we can use those, but it's the knowledge that you bring as well, if you have any thoughts or comments.
Sure, so I would say that the utilization and how the facilities are being loaded is very typical for a district that's seen declining enrollment and is now fairly stable at the enrollment that it's at. It's the same example as you moving into a bigger house and you still fill up all the closet space. That the programs expand to the facility, and then that's fairly normal in districts that have seen declining enrollment. If this were a growing enrollment district, this would not be what you would expect to see. In districts with growing enrollment, we see every classroom space being utilized for regular education programs. The multi-purpose room becomes a place where all those pull-out things happen in those facilities. And so this is typical. It's just how California education works. My daughter's school is a little bit different than this. It's not declining. It's stable, and so there aren't a lot of classroom spaces, for example, that are used for outside programs. They have kind of a central space where all the pull-out programs go into. And I think that's typical of districts where they haven't declined to the point where they've allowed for that additional capacity. So completely normal for what you're seeing demographically within your community. And again, we've looked at districts that are declining and districts that are growing or stable. You don't see as many of these programmatic uses for facilities as you do here.
I also find that, if we talk about, our hope for the future is fewer combination classes, 4, 5, 1, 2, and fewer students at the K through 3 level. So when you think about if both of those are achieved, we'd probably have less pullout. I mean, back when kindergarten classes were 19 students, you didn't have a lot of them pulled out, but now that it's 30 students, you do. So there's a less need for pullout as you sort of reach your goals of
Or finding a different place for storage. That's what.
That's a simple.
Sell those things.
What strikes me also, it's ironic, almost counterintuitive, that in a declining enrollment environment where you're strained for money, you actually have more kids in a classroom than you would under LCFF or under other standards. So we're actually using less space, technically, at least other than the pullouts, but for the classic classroom environment, we're using less space because we have more kids in them.
Yeah, the unfortunate part of the way California funds its schools based on an enrollment, declining enrollment districts have to put more students or find other ways to reduce costs programmatically to make that happen. Facilities, space exists.
Lot to think about.
There really is. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, that was really very informative, and again, we have a lot to think about.
Yeah, we really appreciate your work.
I'll never look at a fire sign saying maximum capacity the same way. I'll be completely confused.
It's only 83%.
I'm going to say to the bartender, is this LCFF?
Thank you. Thanks, Larry.
Okay, and then our next special presentation is on our K through 5 math program.
Okay, well, Marilyn, you're up for the first time tonight, not the last. So the board is aware that we are anxiously awaiting the actual Bridges materials, which should be in our hands in about a month, give or take a week on either side, right?
Right, right.
And just to, as Kevin always says for the audience, Marilyn is going to speak about the Bridges program K through 5 mathematics, which has been piloted in various forms during the course of this year, tested out, rose to the top in terms of a vote or at least input from the faculty and the leadership team. And then you also, if you would, just explain how 6th grade broke off, right, into the 7-8 combination. Not combination, 6, 7, 8.
All right. Mathematics this year has been a little problematic, as most of you know. Teachers have been pulling from a lot of sources. We've had a lot of training, but the teachers have really longed for a comprehensive mathematics program, something that they can just have in their hand and don't have to pull from the internet, don't have to pull from a colleague, but just a good comprehensive math program. So in about January, we started talking about piloting. We talked with the Common Core implementation team. The team included one representative from each grade level. Talked about piloting, and we decided that, well, we looked at 3 programs to pilot. Everyday Math, which is published by a regular publishing house. Bridges in Mathematics, which is published by a nonprofit out of Bend, Oregon. And Engage New York, another nonprofit. And then we met with the rep for Everyday Math. The Common Core team decided, no, we didn't want to pilot Everyday Math. So we decided to pilot Engage New York and Bridges. Now, some teachers had been using Engage New York since maybe October, sometime in the fall, had been pulling things from Engage New York. So we wanted to get teachers who could pilot and be able to compare both. So we wanted teachers who would be willing to pilot Engage New York for 6 weeks, and then about 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, and pilot Bridges for 4 to 6 weeks. And it was a pretty good group of pilot teachers in that we had a teacher from every site and every grade level, and it also included regular education and special education. So it really gave us a lot of perspectives from which to have our discussion. So after the piloting process, we met, we meaning the principals, the elementary principals, and the pilot teachers. And we had a rubric, a numeric rubric, and it was so close. I mean, it was within like 1 point, very close. So we went around and really just discussed what was good about each program, what was lacking, and really the teachers preferred slightly Bridges over Engage New York. So we decided to order Bridges, which we did. We ordered in May. It will be delivered we asked it to be delivered between July 20th and July 31st. And then we'll have a Bridges training, a 2-day training, and one is K2 for 2 days, and the other training is 3-5 for 2 days, done by the publisher of Bridges.
These are the 2 days in that week for students' return. That's what the new calendar provides in terms of the change in the staff development.
And the Bridges trainers come from all over the United States. I got an email from one trainer. She's from Michigan. She asked about the traffic. And she said, I want to avoid LAX. I think I'll fly to Santa Barbara. I said, oh, good. We're an hour south of Goleta and won't be too bad. Then the other one is from Wyoming. And she said she was coming from Anaheim. She has a training in Anaheim. And I said, well, come on the 5, 101 to the 33. And then she has to go back to Culver City. And I said, oh, you're going to have to go on the 405, the busiest freeway in the world. And she said, oh, I'll be glad to get back to Wyoming to my Wyoming traffic. So I wanted to forewarn her. But they're coming for 2 days for training. We're going to have the training at Miramonte. And it's an all-day training from 9 to 4. So for 2 days. I think the teachers are excited about it. I think they're excited just to have a comprehensive program. The Bridges includes digital access for the teacher and digital access for the student. Students can access it at home if they have a computer, or there are also PDF files so things can be printed to take home. It also includes, the teacher package, the student books, which are consumable, and then manipulatives. Lots and lots of manipulatives, like Unifix cubes and pattern blocks and clear centimeter rulers. And so I think the teachers will like it. I really do. Now, Bridges, unlike Engage New York, Bridges is a K-5 program. So it doesn't have a TK component and it doesn't have a grade 6 component. Whereas Engage New York was a TK to 12 program. So we knew that the 6th grade would have to have something else. So the 6th grade team, I think we have 8 6th grade teachers, met with Javier and Magda at Matola. They had already chosen CMP3, which is Pearson. And after talking to them, they decided they wanted to go that same route so that the 6th grade teachers would be teaching CMP3 and the transition into the junior high would be a little more smooth. It would be a much smoother transition for students. So they also have a publisher training. It'll be held at Matilaha, August 20th. It's also an all-day training put on by the publisher. Also, the CMP3 has digital access. I mean, you'll find throughout the year, most publishers now all have digital access. So, and then Javier and I scheduled another training for October 12th when we have our all-staff development day for our CMP3, and it's teaching CMP3 to diverse learners. So it's another separate training, not an overview. So I'll take questions if you have questions.
Well, I have two. I thought the 6th grade had already been looking at the CMP3 before we even looked at Bridges. Is that not? They've just been talking about it?
No, I don't think so. A lot of the 6th graders have been using Engage New York. 6th grade teachers have been using Engage New York. But after talking to maybe 3 6th grade teachers about Engage New York, they really didn't like it. They just didn't feel it was robust enough.
And then my second question was on the
Second page?
Second page, I guess, it says, I thought, for some reason, I was thinking that was teachers. The teachers, in addition to the online, also have a printed something, right? They don't have to go
Yeah, the
online
three-
for everything.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
big time.
Yeah, and then,
On the second page, I just...
because I noticed that pre-printed consumable copies are also available for purchase. So,
Because most districts are going to digital only. So we purchase the pre-printed.
that was my question. Did we do
And
that, or are we doing?
But the teachers will have printed versions. It's in a 3-ring binder, as I said, or in this summary. And, but they also have it in an electronic format.
Carol, I mentioned at the board that we were working on, actually in response to a question that Jane asked earlier, a couple of days, about 2/3 of the cost of Bridges falls to the teacher materials. I mean,
Yes.
It's a really robust document.
I had the purchase orders. Each grade in Bridges is about $20,000. 1,500 of that is for the teacher package. So you have 10 teacher packages. It's 15,000. So then the remainder are the consumables and the manipulatives.
And the consumables have to be replaced every year, whereas the
The
manipulatives don't.
consumables, yes, and I think the consumables, for example, in second grade are $9 each in Bridges.
So is the consumable the only so-called textbook that a student would have?
Yes,
So, is it I read what it described as the student book.
It's a
Include
student book.
instructions, worksheets. It's not really like a traditional textbook as we think of it, right?
no, not like the one you showed me.
Yeah, I have one.
Oh, you can hold that
Trying to
up.
figure out I'm trying to figure out which sample this was that I didn't return. My wife found in my son's room and said,
Yeah,
Norda?
yeah, the second year math.
It's like a sneaky math book saying,
But, so not like this, obviously.
No.
And I guess they probably never had, I mean, do elementary?
But do those even
Oh,
exist?
Yeah.
we did.
Yeah.
But they never went home.
Maryland, I mean, if you were to look at Engage New York, Bridges, XYZ, do those exist anymore? They don't exist yet. Those
Rarely.
The
Yeah.
traditional,
You won't see that.
I mean, they exist in grades 6 and up,
right.
particularly 7 and up. But the elementary mathematics is being figured out.
Yeah, it's just a different way of presenting. And so the student book is consumable. There's something called Home Connections, which I like, and it's a book that obviously is to be done at home. So those are the three components: the student book, the home connection, then the teacher kit, and the number corner, which is a student book.
And the home connection's a video or interactive
It can be.
web-based.
I mean, parents can go on the website and have access, digital access, and have games, things like that.
So the Envision Math is out the window? Is that not?
It's not Common Core aligned, and even Linda, about, I think it was 2 years ago, we met with the Pearson rep, which publishes Envision, and they said, we're coming out with the Common Core aligned with K2. So we ordered it, and
Wasn't good. I like the idea that it's a nonprofit because that gives, it's a group of people who really care about mathematics instruction, and I think it's rather than, making a profit from student textbooks, so.
I really encourage the board to go to Math Learning Center, the website, and read a little bit about the Math Learning Center. And I think it'll give you a flavor of what they're trying to do. And it's to write something.
I'll send out the link on Friday. Because you gave me the link. You gave me the link.
I did.
Yeah, we'll send that.
It's here on the paper.
Maybe
Oh,
you
get it
did.
again?
It's on the corner.
Oh,
It's called
on
Math
It's on that document, that's right. I'll send it anyway.
But I encourage you to read, go on the web and read their, at least their introduction. And like you say, Linda, it's a nonprofit, and it just feels better. And that we're giving all this to big publishing houses.
I noticed the agenda says this is the piloted program. So I'm wondering, have we actually used this or is this the pilot? And so what's our commitment at this point?
Okay, we have piloted it, and now we're going to
Okay,
use
so now we're committing to it.
and we're asking the board to approve it.
Well, I'm really pleased that there's been so much analysis and testing and conversation and all of that. I feel like this will be really great in the future. I feel really terrible for the students this last year that had to go through all of this.
And the teachers.
And the teachers, yeah, for that matter. But it wasn't, I mean, it was because Common Core came out before curriculum was available.
That's true. That's true. I don't think that students really realize the angst that was going on among teachers, because teachers do a really good job of, if they have 33 kids, you don't really know it. They try to give personal attention, etc. They do a really good job of doing what they have to do. And so I don't think students notice angst in teachers.
Great. Are there other questions, comments?
I think I would just say, as a board member, when there's a presentation like this, what I'm, needless to say, interested in is the process that you followed. It sounds like it was a good process, but, obviously I'm not going to sit here and second guess teachers and say, gee, I don't like this, I have a better book. So, it sounds like it's thought out, it sounds like you vetted it, it sounds like this is, as you said, the slight preference over the other program, and so it seems like something we should do.
That's why we tried to make it very inclusive, including special education, as I mentioned. Special education, every size and every grade. Some we might have had 2 or 3 teachers from one grade, but every grade was represented. So the teachers know best. They're the ones that have to have the strongest voice in this.
Well, I do think Marilyn knows I had started looking because we had heard, well, when I asked her, she said, there's just not enough curriculum choices out there, that people that are actually producing this. So maybe it was Math Learning Center, but there was another site that had actually reviewed the Engage New York. But there was multiple books that they were reviewing, and they took a Common Core issue or concern, and then they'd show you whether that book had it or not. And there was very few publishing companies that were producing curriculum that were covering all those things. Engage New York was one of the highest approved. So Bridges being what the teachers are finding very similar, that's really encouraging that even though it's one of the early models for Common Core curriculum, it's already got all those points that we're hoping to hit.
One thing that I've been thinking about more is like as the curriculum comes before us more and more. Bless you. That's his way of mocking. But more and more, there are presentations that talk about what's available on the internet. And so I think as a school district, we have to ask ourselves, are all of the constituents being able to access the internet? I think the answer is probably no. And then we have to ask ourselves, how big is that divide? And then is there stuff that we can do? I wonder, for example, I've thought about whether certain elementary schools, when we do more infrastructure and have terminals, maybe we keep a classroom open in the evening where people can come and have multiple sites where they can get on the internet for free and access this material. Because increasingly it seems like it's not just a luxury, it's part of the whole thing.
It's essential. It's interesting, when I was the principal at Chaparral, we did a survey about computer access, digital access, and every student had digital access, but they didn't subscribe to a daily newspaper. So it's just a different way of thinking, and I agree about the infrastructure in our schools. We need to make it more robust.
I think a
Thank God for the
related...
library. The library
Yeah,
does.
I mean, I think a related point, and I've noticed this in business, that businesses are more electronic than they've ever been, but people are using printers less and less. And a lot of people who have computers don't have printers at home. And so are we requiring that assignments be printed and turned in, or can they be turned in digitally?
More and more teachers allow them to turn in digitally. You know, they'll have something on the cloud, Google Docs.
Right.
And our teachers we had 2 trainings with Google Docs, for example. So that's one way to go to that, is turn in to Google Docs, for example.
Well, good, yeah.
I have one more thought. There's a pretty robust after-school tutoring program at the library. Perhaps some of those volunteers would like to be involved in the training. I don't know if there's room for them, but I don't, if you think that's a good idea, just to help,
Yeah,
because they're helping students with all kinds of assignments.
I'm going to have to
Think about that, yeah.
Yeah.
So one other question. Is this so it's piloted, all the teachers like it from what they've seen,
Right.
So the proof is in the pudding, right?
Right.
So hypothetically, let's say we get it in and it isn't as terrific as we thought. What's our commitment? Is this a year-by-year commitment?
Year by year.
Okay. all right.
Because they're consumable.
So we're not on a contract to
No, but
mandatory
we did
renewal or...
purchase a 6-year license. So we have the digital license. That was part of the $1,500 for the teacher package. So,
That's phenomenal.
Great. Any other comments, questions? Marilyn, thank you very much. That's been so helpful. It's always great when we can have a conversation and
Yeah.
understand things a little bit better.
had it not been late in the June, I probably would have brought 2 teachers. You know, they're always much better at explaining.
Well, we know you talked to them, so...
And you do like bridges, I hope.
I loved Eureka or Engage New York, but I found it extremely frustrating because a lot of the manipulatives that they wanted, I didn't have, even though we have a lot of manipulatives. So it was extremely frustrating because I would run around school before my students got there and say, do you have Unifix cubes? I need a lot of them. Or I'd be right in the middle of a lesson going, oh, I didn't read that part. Oh no, right? So I found that very frustrating, but it was the first time I've ever really, really deeply understood what my kids were working towards. Because you always just assume it's kindergarten, so they're learning to add or something like that. Something very simple, but it wasn't simple at all, and Eureka really helped me to understand what I was teaching and how to teach it better. So I was sad when I heard that we went with Bridges, and yet everyone assured me that Bridges was very, very similar, except for that it provided you with manipulatives. And so I jumped for joy
You have to run
and said,
around.
"Oh, okay." So that would be my feeling. So
That's great.
I'm happy with Bridges.
All right, so we're being asked to approve it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Bridges Elementary curriculum.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Wonderful. All right, moving on to item 7 in the agenda, 7.1.1, the variable term waiver for employment of speech therapists.
Well, there's a lot of writing here, very excellent description from Jody Heath, who's our certificated staff leader. She's on top of everything we need to know about people who are seeking to teach in an area where the precise certification hasn't quite been achieved. But you can see unquestionably how committed this teacher is to becoming a certified speech therapist. And I can tell you that speech therapy is among the top 5 most difficult positions to fill in the state. There's a dearth of people in the field compared to what is emerging, not surprisingly, as there are more and more IEP-driven speech therapists type people. The ability to fill those positions is getting very, very critical. So we're thrilled that we have someone internally who's seeking to become fully certified. And I'm asking you to approve a year of her ability to go seek that certification.
Can we have a motion?
I move approval of Lori Ponce as the speech therapist.
All in favor? Aye. All right, 7.1.2, Annual Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Educators.
Again, I would just say that California is extremely strict when it comes to certain types of certifications. You can see in one case on page 3 that we just simply can't do what they would prefer we do, and that is to have an intern program just because of our size. And I communicated with one board member about the item on page 2. Essentially, almost all of that group of 9 are people who come in from out of state. And so there's a period of time where they have the ability to go become class certified. If you come in from another state, you wouldn't have even known that you had to do it. And I can give you an example of what I found out I had to do after 23 years as a superintendent. To be certificated as a superintendent was quite an experience. So I wasn't fully certified as a superintendent until July 1st of 2010 when I started. But Linda said it was okay. She gave me a pass. But I had to take a test. So it had nothing to do with being a superintendent.
Do you
Just had to
take
take
the
that.
CBEST?
Oh, no. What was that thing called? What's it?
CBEST.
The CBEST, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting in this room. I'm sitting in a room where the average age was, other than I, was probably about 24. And they know this is old guy walking in here, you know. I want to tell you something. I studied. I did, because I was not going to get anything out of it. I could just see headlines. You know, superintendent flunks CBEST. I did.
2 plus 2.
Yeah, it's 5. It's 5 in Common Core. Like, no, it's not. Anyway, so that's what this is about.
Great. Can we have a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve the declaration of need.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. 7.1.3, Letter of Intent from the CSEA. We're asked to hold a public hearing. So if I could have a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And do we have any comments? Okay.
Just quickly, Chuck, I don't know if you want to speak, but the document that is here is exactly the document Chuck Crawford, President of CSEA, Ohio Unified School District, gave me at the end of the June last meeting. So here it is in front of you as an opening statement of what's important to the union to discuss. Andy and I are going to flip roles. He will be the lead negotiator for the district, Board of Education, with the CSEA. I will work with him. So that was sort of the opposite of what we did with the teachers. So, Chuck, looking forward to working with you, and we can get it done as soon as we can.
Great, thanks. I think we could have a combined vote on closing the public hearing and accepting the letter of intent.
Quick question. What was the hiccup on that issue that you discussed last time?
It wasn't a hiccup, it was a matter of timing. I mean, just that I think Chuck was becoming president. The only issue I had, I won't call it hiccup, the only issue I had was that, as you can see in the upcoming agenda items, if we could have forwarded a part of the negotiations with CSEA, that is the financial part, so that we could have completed it before tonight, then I would have presented the CSEA settlement, if they agreed, in the same format as everybody else. But it was just a matter of time. So we'll do it, I'm sure it'll go well, we'll do it in the fall.
Aren't they waiting for the real budget to come out too?
I don't know, Chuck, any thought on sort of how we ended up here as opposed to a month ago?
You have a right to take the fifth. It's up to you.
Well, I want to thank the board. I just want to thank you. We're all aware of the compassion that you've displayed through the hard time. We've all ridden this horse together for at least 8 years. And the questions that are being asked are dynamic, and because you understand the depth of it. And the employees, we've all adapted to this, and the comments that are made in the letter we put forward address some of those. And in the budget that's presented, addresses some of the issues just more, it's not just my voice. There's 160 people, and timing-wise, with 10-month, 11-month employees, and then the few 12 months that are still here, it was difficult time frame presented to do that. And we did have that May revised budget, which, you know, the numbers changed drastically, and we're all trying to be accountable, respectful, so timing-wise, it felt better at the beginning of the school year.
You need everybody here. You need everybody to agree on whatever it is we agree on.
I have to say, for a guy who didn't plan on speaking, that was pretty good.
Chuck can do it. He's good off the cuff.
All right, thank you. So can we have a motion to close the public hearing and accept the letter of intent?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. 7.1.4, the initial district proposal to the CSEA. Again, we need a public hearing, so we'll need a motion to open that public hearing.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hank, do you want to?
No, as I said, Andy will take the lead, as Andy did in prior years, and I can see a really excellent evolving relationship between Andy and Chuck, and I'm very optimistic about how well that's going to unfold, and we look forward to everybody getting back together again in August.
So, just for clarification, the one we just had the public hearing on is the letter of intent to meet and negotiate. And this public hearing is about the district's initial proposal.
Which is really just to say that we're going to meet and negotiate.
Right, which is pretty much the same, but it's important that we do that separately.
Right, but I mean, as you see the document, the union had a number of specific things. We're just simply saying we look forward to talking about it.
And I want this to be clear for everybody because it's not clear what.
It's a little obtuse.
The way we're doing, even I don't understand what we're, I mean.
We're doing it because the law says you have to do it. Okay.
I understand what we're doing, but it's not super clear. So I just want to make it clear to everybody what we're doing. Okay.
So if I may, the one point of clarification, the OFT contract did not terminate this year. So while we were going through negotiations with OFT, that was for the purpose of salary. With CSEA, their contract actually is a 3-year term that began in, I'm sorry?
It's the whole contract.
Exactly. It began in 2012 and it expires October 31 of 15. So that's why we're going to be looking at the entire contract and specifically looking at the areas that CSEA has identified as not just a salary component, but at all areas of the contract and what they want us to look at and negotiate in anticipation of renewing a 3-year term for 15 out to 18.
That's great. I feel better now because we had a public hearing here. I felt like somebody should say something. So that was great.
And I love the fact that our initial proposal is, we look forward to talking.
Exactly. How much more accommodating than that? I mean, come on.
All right. So at this point, if there's no further comment, we could entertain a vote to close the public hearing and adopt the district's initial proposal.
I'll move.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, and then moving on to item 7.4, the 2015-16 consolidated application for funding categorical aid programs. So if we didn't need an explanation before, we need it now, Marilyn?
Maryland round 2.
I realize the consolidated application is new to 3 out of 5, so I thought I should explain it. The CONAP, as it's referred to, we do a CONAP 2 times a year, in June and then again in February. It's really the fiscal mechanism used by CPE to distribute categorical funds from various state and federal programs to school districts. So the purpose of the CONAP is to declare our intent for participation in the funding, and you can see that on one of the pages. we check which funding we want to participate in. And also, the CON-ACT includes legal assurances of compliance as required by both the state and the federal government. And the programs provide funding for students such as Title I or Title III, even Title II, students that meet certain eligibility requirements within our district for both direct and indirect services that benefit learning and academic success. So, for example, Title I funding is based on free and reduced lunch. Title III is English learner, and then Title IIA is professional development.
Any comments, questions? Then we could vote to approve the consolidated application.
I move approval.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Okay.
All right, and so in terms of being at both ends of the spectrum, we talked about opening negotiations with CSEA. We're talking about closing that with the Ojai Federation of Teachers with approval of the salary settlement. We've talked about this a lot in the past. Is there any discussion you want to have at this point?
I'd just like to say one thing. I'm going to give the board actually something they already have. So this is a copy of the article that appeared yesterday in the Ventura Star. And I've received a number of very positive comments about it from people who were sort of aware of what was happening. Angie, I want to be sure you get a copy, Chuck, that you get a copy. I think, Kathy, you made copies for the back. And I did send it out to actually both of you along with all the members of the team, negotiating team. It was a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, to speak with Claudia about this, because I wasn't sort of dancing around the negative as I have every other year, trying to not cover up the negative legal sense, just trying to make every other year be as good as it could be given the relative severity of our situation. So I won't go over all the details here. I'm just saying that tonight it's a pleasure not only to have done the interview and see the article come out as it did, but to recommend essentially jointly 7.4.2 and 7.4.3. Obviously, you can see the language is exactly the same, other than different people are covered. So the salary settlement with OFT is a result of the work we did in this room over a number of hours, and the board obviously knows the results. They're represented in the article, and I'm bringing to you also the exact same increase for those people who are serving in our leadership roles in the district, whether they're certificated or classified. And there's this one group called the psychologists who actually have a separate salary schedule not governed by the OFT because their work year is about 15 days longer than the teachers. So that's why they're on here. And if you go on our website, you can see that the certificated management salary schedule actually has a line at the bottom which talks about the psychologists. I know how it happened. I'm not exactly sure about the concept, other than they just have a different work year. So anyway, my recommendation is to obviously approve the settlement and also extend the same benefits to those people who are not covered by the OFT, and hopefully we'll have a similar or same settlement with CSEA sometime in the early fall.
Well, why don't we take the vote first on the OFT?
Can I ask just one question? I forgot. I
Oh, the additional time,
Yeah.
yes, I wrote that to you. So we had a sidebar, if you will, with the OFT, and we agreed that in addition to these three components of the settlement, that if the district received $250,000 or more in additional LCFF funds, right, that the 0.5% on top of the 1%, so it would be not on schedule, on schedule, would be extended to the OFT members. Unfortunately, within a few days after the settlement, we learned that not only are we not getting $250,000, more. We're actually getting less next year, and LCFF funding than the original plan, not by much, but there's no evidence at all that that's coming. But if it does come, I promise you, I will be back here at the table asking for an additional 0.5%.
How much less did we get?
What, 40,000? We had, was it 40 for next year less, but more this year?
Right.
Over the 4 years, right? 14, 15 through 17, 18, about 110,000 total less. Right. So, but that will change. It will, you know.
Well, that was my question, because I had a memory of something happening in December.
Oh, we did. Oh, we did. We had
This year.
$170,000 or something. So I'm saying it'll change. But I don't, my suspicion is that with Governor Bradley, that if more money comes, it won't come in the LCFF. And it'll come on one-time thing. I just don't, he's very concerned about what we're spending.
But, so, it's only, I mean, if we get one-time funding of $250,000.
That doesn't qualify. Because the purpose was to extend another 0.5% if and when we were able to supplement our ongoing funds. So LCFF would be ongoing. The others are one-time funds. And we talked a lot about it, and that was the agreement that we had. So it had to be an ongoing funding in order to kick in the extra 0.5%.
Even though it's off schedule?
Even though it's off schedule.
Are there any other questions or comments? Well, just quickly, I'm so excited that we can offer more money rather than less money, that I just want to say that again. If we can have a motion to approve, that'd be great.
To approve?
To approve the OFT salary settlement.
Move to approve the OFT salary settlement.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. And then similarly, we need a vote on the salary increases for certificated and classified administrators and psychologists. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm sorry, I'm only hesitating because it seems like it's the same item. Why are they being separated?
Because the one is the direct
No,
result of negotiation.
No, I understand.
The second one, I felt it was important to not try to include people who weren't part of the negotiations.
There are two categories of employees.
Right.
Look, I'm just saying I thought it was item 7.4.3 for both.
The first vote was 7.4.2.
Got it. There we go. That was my confusion.
Okay.
So normally, like in a district that has funds and is not in declining enrollment, and how are this category, how do they get raises?
It's sort of complex and sort of simple in the same way. It's complex because the superintendent bears the responsibility to make a recommendation to the board based on I'll speak about my own experience, based on a number of criteria. Where this group, whether these people as a group, and in some cases, if you differentiate within the group, where certain people fall within the marketplace, if you will, okay, based on their experience and the salaries that are attained by those people in other districts. I've had the experience of making a differentiated recommendation. For example, if the teachers are getting, this is back in the old days, the teachers are getting 6%. That's back in the 90s. And my job was to come to the board and make a recommendation about the administrators as a group, or in some cases, individually, right? Because they're not covered by any group contract. And some years, I went to the board and said, I'd like your approval to come back to you with a span of 3% on either side of the teacher settlement, 3 to 9. Those are the days where, because in my case, a different state, but significant funding available and the opportunity to make those discretionary decisions year to year. This is precisely the opposite, right? Because for all the years that the teachers and the classified staff were covered by union contracts, contributed to all the things that we've talked about, furlough days and salary reductions, the administrators were contributing more furlough days, as you know, and had the same lack of full school year, the same lack of increase. And so, short of trying to figure out a Rubik's Cube, of what would be appropriate for those people not covered by contract, negotiated contracts for 2015-16, I felt, and always have felt, that this was the right way to do it. So that's why I heard it.
I'm not sure we got all the votes in there. On the 7.4.3,
I have a motion from Linda, but I didn't hear the second.
I think it was mine.
Yeah.
And then, all in favor?
Aye.
Right, so I think they've all been unanimous, as far as I can tell.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the, Angie, thank you for the negotiations.
7.4.4, we spent a lot of time on the LCAP last time around. We're being asked to adopt that.
Is
Are
there
there any-
discussion? I'll move to adopt it. unless-
Great.
Is the LCAP?
The LCAP.
I'll second, but I do want to say that I do think we should, going forward, include metrics for how many people that show up at the meetings, because I do think that's a really important aspect of LCAP.
Great, yeah. All in favor? Aye. Right, and that's a good point, but we can't for last year because we don't have those numbers. Yeah, but going forward, I think it's a great point.
Thanks.
Yeah. 7.4.5, again, in our last meeting, we spent quite a lot of time on the budget. We're being asked now to adopt the final budget for 2015-16, and final is,
As of today.
right, I shouldn't say it, but it's like Subway's foot-long sandwich, which is foot-long by definition, but isn't 12 inches. Right, so final just means we're asked to call it a final budget, knowing that there will be changes going forward. We have a motion to approve.
Just
Yeah,
before we
question.
approve.
Sure.
No question. I just, with Kevin's comment on the LCAP, I just wanted to voice, I was really surprised at last week's meeting that no one came. I mean, because when I was running, that seemed to be a very big issue, the budget and how we spend the money. And we had a public meeting last week and no one came.
Right, by no one, we're not talking about our union reps and our
No, yeah,
support people. Yeah, I just want to make it clear there were people here, but the public, no one who didn't have a role here was here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're televising now too, and we didn't the previous years, so that may be another thing that's happening. Some people are actually watching, that's all.
Yeah, they were all huddled around their TVs.
In the air conditioning. Oh, we got
You're
it.
calling in.
All right, that was it. So I'll make a motion to approve the
Great, and a second?
final budget.
A second.
All in favor? Oh,
Just one thing, before we do it, and boy, I really hate to say this, but I need to say it. As euphoric as I have been and others have been about what we were able to do for 2015-16, recognizing that's the only budget that we're asking the board to approve, but at this juncture, we're also asking them to acknowledge that part of the budgets are projections for the next 2 years. And I just want to remind us, so we have to go back and sort of review the June 30th video, that at this juncture, we just talked about these salary increases for 2015-16. But for 16-17 and 17-18, there are no increases built into the budgets. Zero. And we didn't do that because we thought it was a great number. We did it because if we hadn't done that, then the deficit or expenditures over revenues in the 17-18 year would have been way, way too high. And at present, it's $500,000. It would have been twice that or more, depending on what we put in. So I'm not saying that 16, 17, 17, 18, and/or there will be no increases, but at this juncture, to make this concept acceptable, that's what we had to do.
right. We're planning conservatively, but we're hoping that things will.
And the teachers' negotiating team, Andy and I talked about it at length. Angie was just talking about that in that 16, 17, and 17, 18 years, right? we agreed to, at this juncture, put in 0% in those 2 years in order to make the 15-16 year work and have the 17-18 deficit, if you will, right, be less large. Right? And it does not mean that we want that or anticipate that, right? But we agreed at the table that that's what we would go ahead and put in just as a holding number.
And we're hopeful that there will be more money.
You bet. No, we're expecting it.
I'm still hopeful. I'm more on the conservative side on these numbers, so you have to plan for what we've been told, and then we can hope.
Right, and I'll just keep pushing.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, we're out that 5 highway up there. Look at it, great. All right, so we've gotten to the point where all in favor of the budget as amended from last week? Aye. Aye. Great, unanimous. Moving to 7.5.1, the instructional calendar. Are there any questions or comments? Or a motion to approve?
Okay, do you want to say a little
So
something?
just again, as I said this earlier, the difference between this calendar and the one that was approved back earlier in the 2014-15 year, number one, the qualifiers, the caveats about the final 2 staff development days are off the calendar, so we have a full year, as we said before. The other thing is that, as you can see, there are 2 dates here, March 7th and May 27th, we simply say no school. Those were 2 holding dates for which we were hoping to have staff development days. In negotiations, the teachers asked if we could change those dates to 2 days in the week before students came back. We talked about that as it relates to bridges and mathematics instruction. All teachers will spend 2 days in that week unless, now remember, because we have to change this mid-year, unless there's just some conflict that a teacher has because the teacher already made plans to come back on the 24th. If that's the case, then that teacher will work with the principal to be sure that a full staff development experience is complete. But we expect a very, very high percentage of our TK through 12 teachers here in that week before the students come back.
I'm so happy with that.
Good.
There are 180 instructional days.
180 instructional days
which
and
is
4
the norm,
and
right?
4 staff development days. We're back to the 2008-9 school year calendar.
Exciting times.
I would gather that if someone couldn't come early for those development days now that are in August, that they potentially could do March 7th or May 27th.
They could, absolutely.
Yeah.
But, yes, that's true. I'd probably not wait that long.
Can we have a motion to approve the instructional calendar?
I'll move.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Moving on to 7.5.2. At our last regular meeting, we reviewed governing board policies. There have been a few modifications based on our discussion. And just as a precursor, we have more work to do tonight as well. Thanks for being here, Jonathan. So are there any questions or comments on the previous board policies? Or should we move forward with a vote?
Why do we have 2? Why are they separate? Why?
Okay, I decided that because I wanted to get our policies moving. The February one was pretty brief, so I figured let's get that going forward and get it over with. And this one is not brief. The second one we're looking at tonight is over 150 pages. So I wanted to get something discussed and approved, which I think are just about to do, and then just keep moving on the April one. So they could have been done together. I just decided to separate.
I think he's talking about
Okay, so are
Oh,
we?
that was the original. That's the February.
Are we?
No, this vote is on the
The left hand.
Your left hand.
That's great because this thing's full of my annotations.
Exactly.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
that's
So the
what I-
vote-
That's one of the reasons I separated them.
The vote is on the one on the table.
Yeah, one on the table. Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Well, then, why don't we have a motion to approve what we did, unless there are more comments?
February.
I think,
Make a motion to approve this February updates.
second,
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, on to the work. All right. So I think what I'd like to do on this is, thanks for being right there, John, and I'm sure that we're going to need your support and commentary. I don't want to go over every page of this, because we could be here until next Tuesday. What I think I'll do is, my first comment is on page 7. Does anybody have a comment before page 7?
Yes.
Okay, Jane, go ahead.
Well, page 6. You had highlighted optional insert of existing policies, but I would say no on the option. I didn't like the option.
Would you like me to explain that, if I could, just a minute?
Sure.
Okay, the first part, page 5 and 6 was CSBA's recommendation. As I began going through your board policies, you had other items that were there over the last number of years. Some of them were district-wide focus, and that carries over in page 7 and page 8 and page 9. And you can delete these. I'm just going back historically.
That's LCAP stuff, right?
No, it is not LCAP.
It's not.
You
Looks
had
like it.
district-wide focus, and I took out those LCAP areas, like, for example, number 1 on page 7, academic achievement under A and B. And these are kind of generalized things. They're not specific. For example, A says, continue to provide all students access to a strong core academic program. Now, you can eliminate all this. You don't have to have it. It's just that I felt that some of you may have liked it. The one that we have to delete is 1C. So you can take that one right off.
And that was my comment.
That was my oversight, trying to get through 150 pages.
And for those following along at home, that refers to the API and the AYP.
Yeah.
And we have no idea if that even exists anymore.
Yeah. And this, I let that in as a test. You passed. I caught that actually last week, as I was going over with Andy.
Well, maybe it exists, we just, yeah. we
No,
don't-
it's gone.
Is it gone
Yeah,
for sure?
It's gone. But other one, for example, 2, school safety. It's really kind of one of those ubiquitous things. You can't put a finger on it, but it's there. Green schools is an objective that your board has held highly. Item number 4, fiscal solvency. Number 5, student engagement. And then under curriculum, curricular focus area, there were some items. So again, these were all things that you just had, you do not need.
The last paragraph on page 8 also has API and AYP language.
Maybe this is why I had said
Oh,
not
yes,
no
you're
on the
right.
option. Like, I didn't specifically mark something, but it just felt like there was too many things that, for me, I'm not fond of saying, one day's test sort of shows what a student has learned or what a teacher is capable of teaching. So,
Less is better in this case, I believe, but again, as an outsider looking in, I did not want to step on sacred areas.
Well, I really appreciate that because I know in years past, we've spent a lot of time going over policies, and I have felt in years past that I wasn't sure that those were being carried forward. So I really appreciate that approach. Having said that, I think the items that I like in here, the school safety, the green schools, the fiscal solvency, all of those things, we probably have covered in 14 other places.
Probably do.
We do not need pages 7 and 8 to operate effectively.
Yeah, and I was
Or
gonna,
nine.
add that,
Or not, which is like a...
7 and 8 and 9 are gone. Do I hear that?
You're not to
no point in me even commenting.
No, well, feel free.
No, we're good.
Well, okay, so
Well, we're good.
I think we have a consensus on getting rid of 7, 8. All right. My next one is page 62, so maybe somebody has something before 62.
They're like chutes and ladders.
I have an earlier comment.
Okay, please.
So I'm on page 11. And this really goes more to this whole subject, because I think it's a super important one right now, and I mean, I guess I'm asking you as an interpreter of the regulations. You know, there are so many things our school district can't do right now. And I know, for example, art is a good example of something that people, you know, want more of, but we can't afford to provide more of it. And so this whole issue of asking a student to pay a fee seems highly complicated to me. You know, this regulation says that we can't require a fee which constitutes an integral, for an educational activity which constitutes an integral fundamental part of the district's educational program. And it seems that that's a very loaded term. And it also seems to me that puts us in a position where, you know, needless to say, we want to provide scholarships or otherwise for people who couldn't afford it, make it possible for them. But for the others that could afford it, you know, there may be occasions where you'd want potentially to charge a fee just to be able to offer the program. And it seems to me that maybe the law is saying you can't. You're basically going to you're not going to offer it, because if you were to offer it, the only way you could do it is to ask for a fee, and you can't do that.
But there's exceptions.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, the broad sweep of it seems to be, as I just described.
At the heart of this, the legislature and the Department of Education wanted all kids to be included. So if child A could go on a music trip, child B and C could. Maybe only child A and B's parents could pay. Child C could not. And so they said in those cases you cannot do those kinds of things. And then that other district down the road where I'm at, that exactly happened. We had last year, it was in the paper, you may have read about it, the Winter High Orchestra went to Chicago, and not all the kids could go. Not all the kids could pay for it. So it got really tacky. And so they had to go out and arrange for a bunch of money, because if all of them couldn't go, then none of them could go. And so later on, you're going to have a policy that delineates all of those. Yes, that's correct, Linda. And so again, the heart of it is so that all kids have the same opportunity. And so it's a way that makes us as a school district work harder to find ways to have all kids go.
But let's be honest, the converse effect of it is to not do things if you can't afford it.
And depriving some kids of opportunities.
Right.
I agree, yeah.
No, that is.
Well, and it does say which constitutes an integral fundamental part of the district's educational program. So I could look at that and say, well, the music program is fully intact without a trip to Chicago.
Yes, that is correct.
So if you...
But anyway, I mean, this is all policy. I appreciate your explanation.
You're right.
We can move forward.
You don't really have a choice in all this, because there's a parent that is going to feel slighted, and you will be sued. I can absolutely tell you that.
Yeah, and I don't like it either. I mean, it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like if someone goes, we should find a way that everyone can go.
But then again, on the other, yes, I should have cut you off. You're right, exactly. That's what will happen. We will find a way to get all the kids there, or to do it all.
And I guess that's where the difference of opinion is, and I really appreciate Kevin's thoughts, because I think in our district we've done an exceptional job of finding a way for all the kids to go without depriving kids of an opportunity. Because I think we've done it right, it might be hurting us, because now we're going to see what happens when we look at it the other way.
Well, I was also going to mention, I knew that this issue came up, I know, at TOPA at one point, because there was a question of after-school programs, or after-school even daycare type programs. And the school's position, at least through the principal under LeSueur, was that they cannot charge a fee, which probably goes beyond what this says, because it's certainly not integral to the regular school day. But again, I could also understand why you'd want to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, that's a different issue. That's right.
Well, on that page also, I mean, there says optional paragraph. I like that option, so keep it.
Yeah, I have no comment on that. Anybody else with anything before 62?
Oh, before 62?
20?
Oh, I just wanted to make note of this. The board shall first submit a report to the local planning agency as to what the real property the district intends to offer for sale. It is, just when we, in the future, when we continue to talk about this property here, that
We won't do
Remember to do
anything
that.
without a report to the local planning.
exactly.
I thought this one might catch your attention.
I have an earlier one at 58, corporal punishment.
That was page 20.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but 58 may be next.
I was
Do we-
going up to yours.
Yeah, no, do we have anything before 58?
Oh, I do, sorry. 56.
You'll see I do have scratches on my page there.
He does, yes.
I think I've had scratches on everywhere that we've talked about so far.
Well, it's interesting. There's an optional that I circled, and I wrote no next to it, but it looks like it's already crossed out. So,
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, 56? The
Yes.
very first square says the following optional paragraph.
And that was kind of my suggestion. This is a new paragraph, but the problem is reread it. The superintendent or designee shall create a model discipline matrix that lists violations and consequences for each allowed. That can become very subjective,
Very
very
cumbersome.
debatable. So that's why I crossed it out.
Yeah, so I was
Okay.
agreeing with that.
Oh, and I so wanted to do that.
You're half done already.
You can still do it. You can
There's a
just in your
discipline
spare time.
matrix app that's great.
And I don't like anything that's optional that has the word shall, so
Yeah, you don't.
I'm good.
Yeah.
All right, so 58?
So I have a concern. I'm not sure if we're being asked to include this. It says optional, not in CSBA recommendations. It's a description of corporal punishment, and it says that it does not include any pain or discomfort suffered by a student as a result of his or her voluntary participation in an athletic or recreational competition or activity. In addition, an employee's use of force that is reasonable and necessary to protect himself, herself, students, staff, or other persons, comma, to prevent damage to property, and that's the part I have a problem with. I just don't
I
think.
think you should take the whole thing out.
Okay.
I put it there because it's in your board policy right now. CSBA does not believe it belongs there either. And when you say that you can actually put your hand on a student and punish them, that causes a lot of concern. So,
And I'd be concerned to ever do that to protect property.
But
I
again,
think.
I put it there because this is kind of.
So what are you recommending come out? Just that,
Cut the whole thing.
That page, the last page, 58 would not be.
so that, and I'm fine with that, but just so we're clear, that if it was reported to me that an administrator or teacher controlled a student who was about to obtain a weapon, I would cheer that kid.
Right, well, that was going to be my
Right,
next
okay, so,
comment, because
you know,
that's
the
the
question-
next part of the sentence.
No,
I'm just saying, I don't need this, I don't need this to tell me what's right. I agree with you, by the way.
Exactly.
I agree, in general, I pretty much agree about damage to property, but I can give you examples of when you would wish that the person who was there actually did control the student. But I guess it's just, to me, it's a lot of words, and I think that the main thing is you use your best judgment. And by the way, corporal punishment in schools is illegal in California anyway. Okay? So you start there, but then you ask yourself, was that corporal punishment? No. Corporal punishment is when you use force, an adult uses force against a child as a disciplinary measure. Okay? It is not for instance, to control a student who's about to hurt another student. That's
Totally
okay.
agree. Totally
That's
agree.
okay.
Yeah.
And if they have lighter fluid and then a lighter, and they're about to put the lighter on the fluid, that would damage property. I think you'd want that student control.
It might also damage one of the property.
Well, exactly. So anyway, I agree that we don't need all the words.
I know you're a constitutional scholar. I look
I
at
like
it
it.
as those things not
It's not
enumerated.
Eighth Amendment.
Those things not enumerated are retained.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
I mean, I think
it's
the
the Tenth
idea,
Amendment.
yeah, the idea is that we're not delineating a particular exact way everything has to be
Exactly.
done that we may not agree with. Instead,
Exactly.
we exercise good judgment.
Use exercise good judgment. I always tell teachers and principals just to do that, and I'll be right there with you to support you if you were doing something that was professional and in your best judgment.
So is there any opposition to deleting that paragraph? Okay, looks like we have consensus there.
Page 60? Is that what you were saying? Is that-
I was
Get to 62.
on 62.
Yeah, I have something on 60.
Yeah. Oh,
It's another
60.
optional.
Go ahead.
I just find that the participation, views, and advice of one of each of these people, I just feel like it's going to be hard to do in a district our size. And
It's there right now. This paragraph is actually in your current bylaws. However, where I have NWOK off to the 11, to the side, there was a minor wording change there. I cannot recall what it was. It might have been principal or designee.
but what's the optional part? At the top?
That whole section right there from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And actually it may carry over to the next page.
So there's, the optional part is soliciting views?
Is what?
Is soliciting views? Is that what's optional?
Solicit,
Yeah,
yes.
soliciting views, or you can just have rules without soliciting views.
Yeah, I mean, I like that we solicit
Reviews. I just don't know that, does it have to be all 5 of them, I guess, in every situation? I'm probably stretching it here, but
Yeah,
I don't want someone to say, that time they didn't ask the parents.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't read that as every
Okay.
situation. I think it's, and, you know, any good principal will try to create a set of rules that are embraced, right, by as many constituencies as possible. I think that's what this is saying. I think it's a good idea. Again, like with about a high percentage of all of this, you know, a group of people in Sacramento thought they needed to tell us what to do, okay? We don't need them to tell us, but they told us, so now we gotta do something. We gotta do something with it. So, you know,
But to a certain extent, you're already doing this
I know,
in your handbooks.
yes,
And site
Right at the
councils.
beginning of the year.
yes.
Most of the schools have this language of to some type that's in there, you know, don't do this.
To me, it's not objectionable.
And it also says shall solicit. Soliciting is different from actually getting.
My only,
I didn't hear anything.
my feeling about this stuff is that if it's optional and it's in the category as you just described, Hank, which is just, you know, I'm kind of with,
Common sense.
I'm kind of with Jane on it in that, you know, I think to the extent that the district is ever called to task on an issue like this, someone clearly, if a good lawyer would go to this and say, okay, here's what you guys say you do. You solicit the views of, so show us how you did that with the parents and guardians, that, you know, and then you're, well, we didn't do it, you know, I mean,
No, that's absolutely right. And so one position a board could take is anything that's optional, we're not going to do. That's simple.
I wouldn't mind that approach.
Okay. The second thing is that, as I've said numerous times from this chair, if you took all the optional things out and adopted all the things that aren't optional, we still can't do all of those. You can't. It's impossible to do everything that comes out of Sacramento as a recommended policy. You can't. Or it's possible. You subscribe to the policy.
Well, we don't have the money to do
Well,
it.
we don't have the people, we don't have the time. We actually have to teach kids, you know, and not worry about every single subset of everything that some law, you know, legislator thought of, you know, because he wanted to get his name on a bill. I mean, it just, so, but if it's not objectionable, I don't care that much.
I'm okay either way.
John, what do you think on this? What would you recommend?
Well,
You thought about this.
It talks a little bit, if you read that second paragraph, it ties into your school safety plan as well as your LCAP. So there is a little bit of a tie there. It's certainly not necessary. In fact, the first paragraph, it tells you that it's not required.
Well, then I'd
But,
take it out.
you know, you do have to have a school safety plan, and some of
We
the
have that.
components of the school safety plan are how do you set up the rules that control the playground, or, you know, what goes on in the classroom.
Well and good. I think clearly if you do it, it's great. But if we put it on a shelf, I think it's just, it's more ways to get in trouble.
I couldn't agree with you more. So much of this is implementation and staff knowing what the written order is. That's one of the biggest problems that sometimes our staffs statewide often does not fully understand that. So I understand why you as an attorney don't want it, and I partially agree with you, more is less often, because if it's not written, you can't be sued for it. But nevertheless, at the same time, you like to think that there's some thought that goes into how we discipline kids and how we regulate what goes on. So I will leave it totally up to you.
Well, I mean, I think the reaction is we do have a safety plan.
We do.
We don't need this. We do have protocols for discipline. Those absolutely exist.
This becomes the component in your safety plan, though. The safety plan cannot draw from thin air. It has to have a root document. And in almost most cases, it is the policy.
I think we should look at the safety plan and see what's in there, because there are a lot of words in there.
We'll bring this back in August.
I guess what would be helpful to know is if it's not in the safety plan, does anyone, or if it's in the safety plan, does anyone have strong feelings about keeping it here anyway?
I think we should keep it.
I do too. I think that soliciting is, I think you made a very significant point. Offering people the opportunity to comment on rules is not the same thing as getting it. And our obligation as a board is to offer people that opportunity to give us information.
But that's not what we're doing. We're not administrators. We're not going to be in the position to ever implement
My
this.
job as a board member is to make sure that he goes out and gets that input before the district makes these rules.
Well, it's the
And this says that they'll solicit it, right?
Eventually.
It doesn't say that they have to get it to do those rules. So I'm not saying that the public has to, or teachers or whoever, has to talk to us, but I do think it's important that we make the effort to receive it. And I think that's what this is saying. It's not saying we have to have it. It's just saying that we have to, if I'm not misinterpreting it, that we have to seek it, which there's a lot of ways to do that, it seems to me, that are operationally not burdensome.
No question. Listen, I agree. In a better world, if we had the time, and Hank had the time and the focus to say, okay, now another thing for you principals is make sure you solicit, whatever that means, input on these things, great. But all I'm saying as a board member is I don't want, and this is a general approach, I don't want to authorize, ratify policies that are just words on a shelf.
Agreed.
I don't think there's any point in doing it, and I actually think it's detrimental. So if you other board members feel this is one of those runs that rises to the level of let's make sure we enforce it, I'll support you. But I think if we have a lot of those, we're going to, as Hank has said, it's not possible.
I would agree. I don't think policy should be window dressing. But discipline of kids, I think, is really important. And the rules and all of that kind of stuff. And I do think it's important that we not do that in a vacuum. I wouldn't go this on everything. That's like, not every decision, I think, has to get that level. But this is kind of important. So that's just my view.
But, and I tend to agree from this perspective. The back-to-school books, what do you call them? My mind just went blank.
Handbooks.
Beginning of the year.
Student handbook?
Yeah, student handbooks. If a parent challenges that, why is this rule here or why is that rule here, and you don't have a policy that delineates where you drew that conclusion that this is right or that's wrong, I think you'd be much more open to legal activities.
But that's not what this little section is doing.
This section says you're going to have site-level rules, and these people here will be involved in making those rules. In fact, if you go right over the next page, right at the top, it says, and this is a new paragraph, it says, school rules shall be communicated to students clearly and in an age-appropriate manner. That's a brand-new rule.
That's not hard.
Pardon me?
That's not hard.
No, it's not hard, but it points back to the importance of having those rules in place.
Well, I guess the question to me, well, I don't know that we can, because we've got two.
You're talking about whether to retain this or not.
Exactly.
Do we retain page 6?
Right. I mean, I get, my question, based on the conversation, is what exactly do we want our principals to do in setting up these rules? Do they do we want them to, well, we're talking about parents, everybody's kind of within the school here. They're not having to reach out
No, it's
beyond
not community. It's
the
not
school.
community.
Right.
And school security personnel would be playground supervisors
Right.
and crossing guards and those kinds of things.
Right.
I mean, there would have to be some, record of doing this. I mean, this is like LCAP stuff, it's like if you're going to solicit views on certain subjects, then you have a record of having done so. If we're going to put this in a policy, then our principals will now be required to do this, and that's fine.
They already
Yeah, I don't have a
do it.
problem with that.
They already do it.
Do they? Really?
Yes, I think so.
Formally ask for people's opinions on how
Some more
to
than
discipline.
others.
At the site level meetings, I think they do. They have site councils that meet to determine these kinds of issues.
I mean, a simple thing that could be done is to put a statement in the handbook saying, please provide feedback to the principal.
Well,
Of course, theoretically, then the rules are already done.
Right.
So, you know what, we're going to, let me talk to a couple of principals between now and the August 18th meeting.
Well, we have to
Does
actually.
it have to be this specific? I mean, the idea of, it's not like I think, principals are going to go nuts, right?
Right, right.
Given unlimited power and
Right,
authority.
right.
But I do think that there should be some dialogue
Yeah,
about
no,
this.
I agree with that, I really do.
I mean, if we just said the principal or designee shall solicit the participation, views, and advice of stakeholders at the school, and left out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is that,
I don't think we need to give them ABC necessarily. It's the principal that's
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, would we be comfortable with something like that?
Well, one of the things that I'm struggling with as I go through this is, you're just showing us the new stuff, right?
and if things are removed, it's
Right.
not being.
But I mean, I would love to see this all in context. I mean, I'd like to see, here are your board policies, and here's where these all fit in, because, Michael, there may be already language elsewhere
And if
that's
it's elsewhere, I'm fine
satisfies
with
it.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think it is here. That's what all the OKs are.
This is in your board policy now.
But not everything that's already in the policy is in here, right? Just
For this section.
just the stuff, well, maybe just the, I'm thinking maybe pages.
When we received the CSBA policies,
What she was pointing out to me is that if you look at some of the notations below, for example, I don't see any on that page, but on page 61, you can see under bullet, or item number 1 down there, CF 5020, parents' rights and responsibilities, and CF 6020.
They're at the top of page 61 for the previous section.
right?
Oh, yes, you're right. Those are places that you can also look.
What I'm saying is we skip over whole sections in what you've given us, right? I mean, we go
Yeah.
from, So, but on the subject of discipline, this is all there will be in our board policies?
Well, this is all that will relate under the category of students. You may find it under discipline, under personnel, for example,
Okay.
or under instruction.
But Kevin, just tell you, there are pages in the school code that define what you may or may not do to discipline students. Okay, so the places where you look for guidance or for requirements in terms of managing a school or a school district, are in your board policies and the school code, and to the extent that you can follow changes in state statutes, that's good. Basically, the school code, which is literally that high, okay, and our board policies, which are really, if you go on our website, on all our present board policies. So John, that was a really good question, though. Let me see if you can get an answer on that. When you bring forward 154 pages, these pages do not reflect all of our board policies.
Oh, not
The deal-
even-
I mean, boy, if you printed out our board policies, it would be probably as big as the school code, or whatever. So
If we
anyway.
bring binders, this.
But then maybe just take a breath on this, so that what is the purpose of bringing these forward? I know we get them from Sacramento. So are these, when you say okay and new or new wording, they are statements coming to us from the CSBA policy that we pay for, okay, policy work, and you're bringing it to us to take a look, essentially a new look at a policy we already have, but when you say okay, that means
Okay,
what?
okay does not mean it's fine. Okay, now I'm going back to
Jim
my
Brewer.
predecessor,
Gotcha.
Jim
That's
Brewer.
right, no, it's a good system, go
Okay.
ahead.
The okay means it's in your current
Right,
policy.
so if it's
right
okay,
now.
if it's in our core policy, why is it here? Because the language came to us,
Yeah.
and we already have it?
Came to us as a section.
There you go.
And then there are some that it's okay, but they may have changed a word or something very
So
minor.
Kevin, the point is to put it in context, truly context. You'd have to take all the changes, recommended changes, and have all of the pages to which the changes apply. That would be sort of the context.
So this whole thing is from the CSBA?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it's from their staff that pays attention to what's going on in Sacramento, keeping up, this all has to do is change in ed codes, lawsuits that have resulted in new languages. This is to keep you current under the current statutory requirements. So that's all we're really doing, and it's suggesting, you don't have to do it, but, when you deviate, you're on your own.
Well, only with, you've done the work for us to show us what are optional, right? Optional does not put us into a position of peril.
Correct. Optional
Unless you approve it.
is okay. And what the optional means, is it germane to your district? Is this the way your district operates? And there are some areas, like, remember, you may recall last week, we talked about the libraries. There's a code, part of it that talks about library teachers. Ojai does not have library teachers. You have you have classified people that do that job. So it's a little bit different. So that's what this is. I'm trying to make it more germane. For example, she's not here. I went to Maryland on a number of these things regarding continuation. So I go to different people that have expertise in that area. Andy and I sit down and we talk about it, so there is some dialogue that goes on.
This is from our current discipline policy. This is a board policy that's on our website. The superintendent or designee shall approve for each school a complement of effective, age-appropriate strategies for correcting student behavior. Such strategies may include, but are not limited to, conferences with students and their parents and guardians, use of study, blah, 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 blah. Goes on. Seems pretty good.
And John, just to clarify, when you say this is all there is, I mean, this is the discipline section starting
No,
on
it's
page
not all of the
60.
discipline
No, but
section, yeah.
it's not just that page. I mean, it goes on for pages and pages and pages on suspension and expulsion. Most of this is either verbatim or very close to verbatim of what's in the school code.
Yeah, it goes back
And our part
actually
of the
about
policy.
30 or 40 pages.
So, anyway, we're just talking about page 60. Right, 60. This whole thing tells you what you may and may not do relative to suspending or expelling.
This section is on how those rules are developed by this site.
Exactly. And I guess I come out with Mike on this. The spirit, I think the spirit is what's important. Are the rules that govern student behavior and implemented by, let's say, elementary school, by the principal, are they, number one, well-known, which is, like I said, that's not hard to do, but more important, do they represent some type of input and consensus, if you can get there, about what's the appropriate way to deal with misbehaviors? And the only way you find that out is to talk to people. So I guess I like that. I like that input-oriented concept.
So we'll do this one.
Yeah, I think we should. I'd stay with basics.
And I will add, it's in the current policies.
Right.
If you look at AR 5144, you will find this, most of that already in there right now. There's board policy, and then there's administrative regulation. Administrative regulation defines how you're going to implement board policy, and that often follows. It has the same number. So this is under the administrative regulation piece that we have to pick.
Very detailed.
All right,
So we're going to leave this.
Okay, that's it.
All right. On to the next one. My comment is on 62. I'm not a teacher and I'm currently not a student, but I've had bad experiences.
Number
And
11?
Number 11, I really don't like recess restrictions. So I think it's something as a board that at least we should talk about.
Yeah, I agree. I brought that up, and I think Hank was saying, it's really only done when a student is so far behind
Right.
that that's the only opportunity for them to catch up. But yeah, I'm sure most teachers' experiences, that's exactly the child that needs to get out and run around.
Well, that's my thinking. Yeah, but and if a student's behind, we're talking about discipline. We're not talking about academics.
But it is, I mean, it's, the discipline is they didn't do the work when they were supposed to. Not that they, I mean, if it's a child who's just slower and needs more time, then it's not, but, I don't know.
It's a tricky one. I think if you look on page 63 at the bottom, there's a statement there about that recess restriction should be not the first use by a teacher.
We have a teacher here, I think, who has a comment.
Well, having taught kindergarten through 6th grade, personally, I think the only time kids should be asked, let me back up, kids love recess. So sometimes, like, having them do their work during recess is awful. That's my personal feeling. I don't think that's fair to children who are working slow or didn't get their homework done, or I think that's awful. But there are times when children are taking recess in the classroom. Kindergarten through 4th grade especially, they'll take recess in the classroom. And to be able to say, I'm sorry, you just took 10 minutes of your recess time, so now you get to sit for 10 minutes, is a very powerful tool to get a child who's taking recess at the wrong time. Does that make sense? And so it's like, but to take it all away, I think I agree completely, Jane. I think those are the kids often who need to stand up, move around, run around. They need that. So, but it's also a really powerful tool to get some kids to finally just sit down and do their work. Like if you say, you just took 5 minutes of your recess time, I think 5 minutes is gone.
I just know I had teachers who would take away recess from the whole class.
No, that's terrible.
I agree.
I think that's terrible.
I'm scarred enough to say something.
So I was, a good part of my career was in high school, but I've been a K-12 superintendent now for 13 years, and I haven't had one complaint by anybody about unfair restriction of recess. Not one. Okay, so I don't think that we're in an environment here where teachers will do it. I believe what you said, but I've never heard that abuse.
Well, I didn't go to school here.
No. I thought you were like a kid. Anyway.
No, it was me.
Oh, it was you?
That's
Oh.
fine. Yeah.
Oh, you were probably that kid who took 15 minutes during class.
I don't want to talk about that.
This is a tough thing for you to think about.
Actually,
Anyway.
I wasn't the problem at that time.
I just have confidence in our teachers that it will not be abused.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
And also just point out that this is actually a restriction on teachers.
Yes.
This is not an affirmative grant of power. It's an actual restriction on when you can do the limited recess.
Yeah, there was no word they do it all.
Right.
It says it can't be.
Never.
Okay.
I'm 67.
Page 64 also. You do 64 first?
Yeah, 64.
Students may be offered the choice of serving their detention on Saturday. We don't have Saturday school.
That's why I put a question mark there.
I mean, should we leave that in in case we decide?
Well, we have Saturday school, but it's not for detention.
Yeah.
I mean, not Saturday school, we have some
makeup
Saturday,
for-
right, makeup if you're not in school.
Right.
This was in your policy now. But you're right, you do not do detention on Saturday.
So if a teacher wanted to come on Saturday, I guess they could choose to do that.
Okay. I'm just questioning that, because I know we don't, I mean, as far as I know, we never have done detention on
I
Saturday.
think it's useless.
I think it's,
I'll take it out.
yeah.
I'm fine with it. I don't care. It's in your existing policy, but we will remove it.
Take it.
Okay. Okay.
67?
I was just questioning, no, I just realized it says, except where otherwise permitted by law, because it says a student may be suspended or expelled only when his or her behavior is related to school activity, but I'm thinking about electronic bullying.
Okay, I'm sorry. Standing up, Where are we at?
67.
Okay.
And it, I guess the first, it says except when otherwise permitted by law, so I'm assuming electronic
Oh, absolutely.
bullying is covered by the law, so we don't.
This is included but not limited to, right? So, I mean, I'm reading that to, that if there's a nexus
Only
with the
when
school.
his or her
That, the
behavior
key
is-
word, which I use all the time, is nexus. And what's happening with electronic bullying is the nexus is almost 24/7. And they're, again, I'll just tell you what I tell principals. If you feel that there's any relationship between the bullying that's taking place out there in the community and what went on in the school between these two kids, you go ahead and discipline the kids, right? And if there's a complaint, have them call me. And if I'm going to err, I'm going to err on the side of making a very, I've said this before, a very clear, unequivocal, strong statement about how we deal with bullying in every shape or form, door to door, including technology. And if someone wants to challenge me on it, then come at me, fine. So, as I was hearing what Mike was saying, the definition of what that nexus is has grown radically in the last decade. Radically. Okay? And, we just don't, I don't accept it. I just don't accept it. So, it was, back on this, if you can get a lawyer, you can get a lawyer for anything, okay? But we have lawyers too. So, there's certain things.
They cost us money.
We're not, So anyway, that's how I do this.
And I agree with everything you said, however, my feeling is it's unfortunate we live in a world where the schools can reach out into people's houses.
Well, not into the houses. No, there's a limit, okay?
Well, the kids on their
but if the kids-
computer in their house.
Oh, that's unfortunate, but it's reality.
Exactly.
And it's right now, it's probably a few years ago, we had a very strong strain of that at Tillaha that was handled beautifully, but it took a lot of time to find out who these kids were, what they were saying, get the parents involved, and the parents were tremendously supportive. But they can't even go in their own kids' bedrooms to take care of it. So,
And that's why I said I agreed with you before I made the comment.
Okay.
I just think it's unfortunate.
it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate.
So we're going to leave it in, the fact that the school district can intercede, but they
Yes.
don't have to.
Yes.
That's required anyway, right?
It's optional.
It's optional.
Yeah, I guess, just one little paragraph. Mandated regulation provides for clarity in an updated law, AB 256, which clarifies that a student may be disciplined for bullying by means of electronic act, even when it originated off campus. So,
Especially.
yeah. All right. Next page.
My next one is on 116. Does anyone have something before then?
I also have 116.
All right.
I just have a quick question on 115. I highlighted classroom notices. Is that it says new, so that's a new requirement for us to post complaints? Classrooms?
That's
I was like, what?
with the Williams Act. You may recall, that's when it talks about.
We're not posting complaints. You post the opportunity
The enhancement
to,
about it.
if you have a complaint.
Okay, that's what I was like.
One thing about our Williams thing, they're always zeros, so far we're doing well. But yeah, we have to make it known that if you feel there's an insufficiency, then you have the opportunity to step forward. So
And is there something in the classrooms?
So it's usually on the door.
it's on the, it's pretty much, I don't know, everything in general.
Yeah,
This comes from those posters when you go into an office someplace,
Right.
you go in their workroom, it talks about OSHA and, prevailing wage and so forth. It's similar to that. Okay, next one.
Okay, all right. Kevin, do you want to go ahead with your 116?
My comment was with respect to the bottom of page 116. This is concerning advanced placement, and I wanted to ask Hank what he does presently to encourage students to participate in AP courses, which is what is required.
Well, they're, been on this issue for a long, long time, and in our particular case, because we're small, I think what we say in general is, if you've achieved a certain level of proficiency in the course that precedes the AP course, then we welcome you with no questions. If you haven't done that, we welcome you to sign up anyway. But we want to counsel you and understand how difficult the program is. So we really can't afford to be overly selective about AP. You get into bigger schools, you can. My impression is, and if Greg were here, he could answer it better, but my impression is we are exceptionally welcoming to students who want to take AP. But for some, it's a stretch. So, but when you have 700 kids in high school, that's what happens.
What do you mean we can't afford to be selective?
Well, I think, I'll tell you, in a school of 2,500, if you have 3 to 4 times as many sections of that AP course as we have, you can say you must have a B or better in the prior class in order to get in. And if you don't have a B or better, then you go to some, whatever the level is of that particular course in that particular department, it's just below AP. The smaller the school, the less you can do that. And so I guess I would say, compared to high schools in general, that our encouragement of students to take AP is pretty high, because we want to have the class. We have, you said 10, I think you said 10, John? And we have 10 AP offerings. And one of the things I know that the administration, counselors, and staff at Nordo really value is retaining as many AP classes as we can within our size. So, total of all those words is that we need to be open and welcoming to students who want to take AP, because we can't create a coterie that's big enough to have all the AP classes we want without doing that. So I'm confident that we're welcome.
Do we have the opposite problem? Do we have more students wanting, say, AP calculus than we can offer?
Very rarely.
In English, I think currently
we have
an issue.
English is a little bit different.
And for scheduling purposes, I think we have.
Actually, what happens more often is you have a number of students who register for a single section AP class, say 36, which is very high, and 36 can't get in. Right? Because when you have a single section class, you're always competing with other single section classes. So a student wants to take AP this, and then music that, and you have to make a choice. The bigger the school, the more sections you have, the less conflicts you have. So I would say that with a school like ours, where we're trying to maintain a broad AP program, we have to be as nimble and creative as possible to have kids who want to take it. Now, the English one is a little bit different, because some of the classes are big, and I've talked to Greg about that. I have no doubt that after talking to him about 1 year in particular, that will create enough sections for the kids, in particularly ninth grade, which is more honors than AP, but making sure that we have enough places for those kids to be.
What's the difference between honors and AP?
AP is a national certified course where you take a test at the end of the course and you get somewhere between 1 and 5, right, 5 being the highest. Honors is, well, you can have honors all the way through your program, but typically honors would be for freshmen and sophomores. AP would be for juniors, seniors.
And with AP, you can potentially get college credit.
You do get college credit. That's the point. It's a college level course in high school.
So my comment on there is we currently have 10 classes. Our board policies say we should have at least 4.
It's just the opposite. You currently, that's the difference in this policy. Right now, your policy does say 10.
Oh, okay.
And the
How
way
many
they
do
sent
we
it to
actually
us
have?
was 4. That's why I put NWOK. It's exactly the same, except what they sent us was 4, and you currently have 10.
That's just so arbitrary.
Yeah. How many classes do we have? Do we know?
Well, 10. If we have about 10, I'd have to look at the program, but we're in that 9 to 10 range. I have to check. Anyway, we have way more than 4, I can tell you that.
It does say desires. It doesn't say.
And it says at least.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why they came up with 4. That's ridiculous.
I'd like to continue to be as aggressive as we can in AP, so I would like to maintain the 10.
Yeah, I would.
We desire that, we do.
Okay, great. My next one is on, wow. I have a concern about 123. Does anybody have something before that?
No, that's what my concern is.
Yeah.
I have that.
Yeah. It's,
At the bottom?
yeah, that the district shall annually make progress toward maintaining an average class size of not more than 24 students. I want to do that, or 20. I want to do that, or less, I want to do that. But I don't know that we have the capability to make annual progress at this point.
Right, and it does say this whole class size is optional, and I think, again, it's dangerous. The board shall establish class size limits appropriate for each grade level. It's like, well, we can't.
What did the LCAP presentation say about K3? I thought it said 24 students.
Well, yeah, you know, as I said, the documents say a lot of that. I mean, let's go back to our contract with the teachers. We have numbers in there, and as I said, an hour ago or whatever, we're going to sit down and talk about what class sizes look like in this coming year. So that with Angie and anybody else who wants to come, given the available revenues that we have, right? So the whole concept, whether it's LCFF driven or board policy driven, there's always a statement that you may collectively bargain, right? Different numbers, and we do, and we've had to do it over the last number of years, and we still have to do it. So the 20 is just not, it's not feasible.
Well, it does say unless an alternative.
Right, exactly.
20 is what your policy says.
I know, it's not feasible.
But 24 isn't.
It looks like the law requires the 24, though. According to the
You should be
square.
making progress, you should be making progress as much as possible, and always keep in mind, if you can't get there, you need to sit down with your leadership of your union and talk about why. That's the point.
But it seems to me it doesn't matter if it's 24 or 20 or 10, because we're negotiating that, because we can't, we can only do what we can do.
So it's fine as is because
Well, all I can say is that
take it out.
they,
Well, Dr. Bang's right. I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's what this says. It says the district shall make progress towards that.
That's
well,
my
we are
question,
actually.
So then,
We are making progress.
Yeah.
What is, it's a shall, right? It's not strive for or seek to, it's shall make progress. So what is progress under a mandatory shall? What does that mean?
To me, it would mean if we were committed to making sure this happened, we would do exactly what we're doing next year compared to this year. We have more classes, K through 3, that are closer to 24 than they were last year.
What happens if it goes the other way? for some
Then we
reason?
haven't done it.
I mean,
Well, we've got unless an alternative annual average class size for each school.
right, unless you negotiate different class sizes. But what if you just make progress and then you don't make progress?
Then we are operating inconsistently with board policy.
Okay. And that's,
I will be able to
It's a
sleep.
statement of fact.
I'll be able to sleep that night. Okay, but I also want to be sure that everybody understands how important having smaller classes is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? You know, I've shared that with you. We have a plan, which is now will be 4 or 5 years old, to try to create those reductions of student-adult ratios. So I just think that if we're going to do anything, I would replace 20 with 24. Only because 24 is the number that appears
So
in a
we'll
lot of
leave
states.
24 in.
I would leave it in.
Yeah.
All right, is that okay? All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think hopefully anyone watching recognizes that this is the elephant in the room. And we, certainly, I think everyone on the board appreciates the importance of smaller class sizes.
Absolutely.
We are between a rock and a hard place, allocating dear resources and trying to do our best to keep everyone reasonably happy. So
I think you have
it's a hard one.
2019 also, it says by the time LCFF is fully implemented, and I think 2019 is the last year. So,
The problem is it's in the notes, it's not in the policy.
oh, you're right.
Yeah.
But that's my way of explanation.
Right. Oh, that's good. I had a similar comment on 135. Is there anybody else before that?
126, that's kind of going back to that, the governing board recognizes that student assessments are an important instructional and accountability tool. Is that referring to the state testing or just general assessment?
I would say general.
And never mind.
It also talks about LCAP in there.
Well, because, I mean, deep down, I would love to get rid of state testing.
I think what they're really saying is testing is just one aspect of assessment.
Yeah, so 135, it's on the libraries. It's kind of like the class sizes.
What are you on, sorry?
On 135, it says school library shall be open for use by students and teachers during the school. Well, I guess
Well,
if
they're open. They're open. We just don't have them staffed all day.
right.
And they're not, I mean, I can't give you an exact number of hours, but we have
There's no
volunteers.
school day when they're not open.
Right.
It might not be open the
Right.
entire school day.
Right, they're open during school day.
I just wanted to, again, point out that we'd love for libraries to be open and staffed all the time, and we're doing our best.
Well, I guess actually 137 is the same thing. It's actually more specific about that, because that's what's my next. Annually assess and report to the
One now?
board.
Right.
The superintendent or
Yeah.
designee shall annually, bottom of the page,
Okay.
assess and report to the board regarding the conditions and use of school libraries.
Well,
Really?
I guess.
There's another job for you.
I guess
Maybe you can do that.
another politician thought of something
But it
else.
says
But it's
optional.
optional.
This is optional, Hank, we can take this up.
I would take it out.
Yes.
I can give you a quick report.
Okay,
Where is that?
Just
Bottom of
before you-
137.
we move, I want to get your concurrence
What's
with,
that?
on page 136, option 2, we want to use the word may and not shall in
Yes.
libraries.
okay. And I know we've had that discussion in the past.
And that is your practice. It's not always charged.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
So we have option 1 or option 2. And if we did option 2, we may.
Yeah, we currently do option 2. We sometimes charge, sometimes don't.
So
We
now-
mostly don't, according to the library media tech.
Are we,
I would like to keep a little bit of leverage. We don't have a lot of leverage. I think we ought to keep, I can't remember where you get it.
Well, no, it's just on the late return. If they don't return it, they should have to pay for the buck. But if it's late, I don't. I'm
Well,
thinking of
they'll-
different
Alex, it's as old as dust, the idea of paying a late fee for your book.
I would go with option 2 and may.
Okay.
I mean, it goes without saying that it wouldn't be an ad hoc process, right? It would be defined as to how this would be applied.
It is.
that would be a system. Is everybody okay with 2 in May?
Yes. And actually, I do want to make a comment on the removing the requirement that Hank reports on the school libraries. I'm okay eliminating that, but I do think actually it's something we should encourage the principals to talk about. In each of the presentations, I don't remember that.
School plan, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, it
In the
seems like,
past.
yeah.
I would like that. My next one's on 153. Anything before that?
That's my next one.
Wow.
That's mine too.
All right, and my comment is put clerk in.
What page?
Clerk, that's Jane.
What page?
153, there's a blank space. The minutes shall be signed
You don't
by...
like two DVDs.
I do not like...
You don't like open space.
No, I-
Where are you looking?
Not in budgets or policies.
It's normally the board
Everything filled in.
secretary.
What's that?
The board secretary.
Board secretary.
I'm really impressed with you.
Yeah, I think that we call it clerk.
I'm the secretary.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm actually the secretary.
Oh,
She's a clerk.
yeah.
You're you're
I'm the secretary.
in your clerk.
Yeah.
So clerk.
Clerk.
All right.
Board clerk.
So you can make it either one, I guess.
No, Jane.
We'll go with clerk. Yeah, I think a board member should sign that.
The minutes are signed by the president and by the clerk.
Exactly.
And that's okay too. Everybody can sign them, but at least somebody on the board should
I think
sign
at
them.
least 4 people at each school district. At each school site, I mean.
Representing each
And the security personnel.
category. Okay.
And actually, on the bottom of the page,
Yeah.
Thane, I just wanted to point out, the board president shall announce that a recording or broadcasting is being made.
Yeah, I
You guys
read
have
that,
lots.
and we really should. I've made reference to it, but I haven't officially said that. We should each time. This is being broadcast.
I mean, just because somebody could say something and I didn't know it was being broadcast, I wouldn't have gotten up and spoken in public if I'd known. I guess that's what it.
I usually say to the people watching at home and things like that, but so it should be more official. I agree.
And I also would, I think we all agree, we have a new policy actually that's a little different than this one that's described. This one says we may tape. I would say we endeavor to tape and broadcast whenever feasible, right? I mean, that's our
We've done
preference.
everything.
That is our preference.
The only miss-
I just always like May better than shall. I don't know why you like shall all the time, Kevin. No, I'm kidding.
I'm a kind of a shall,
Can't think fast enough.
shall guy.
After you've argued May all night.
I'm a shall guy on stuff I've already done.
There you go.
You guys are getting tired.
We are. I was just going to
Wait, I do
say.
have one more on the last,
Okay.
the last page, 154.
We are officially kind of.
Recordings may be erased or destroyed 30 days after the meeting. I don't like the
Yeah,
30
I
days. Can
That should
we-
be
What are you
archived.
comfortable
It
with?
says May. It says May.
I know, but I don't want it to be.
Yeah, I
It may
think-
not be destroyed.
I
That's
think
what I'm
we should
saying.
keep them for a while, but we don't want to keep them forever.
I think
Well, they're on the
we
website.
can record them.
And they're on
How long?
Why
YouTube.
not?
Well, we're now on
Why
YouTube.
not archive them?
So we could archive them, but do we want to mandate that they're maintained
I
forever?
like going back and,
Yeah, what if the electronic copy we have is destroyed for whatever reason? Then we're in trouble.
Well, then that just happened. But this is doing it yourself. You're saying you don't want
But
us.
we actively.
You don't want
yeah,
us
I
to-
don't, yeah, exactly.
Kathy, what happens now? Let's say it's a year from now. What happened? Well, 30 days. That's really fast.
That's what I mean. I mean, 2 years.
We're
is
not doing that. We're not doing that.
So we have, I'd have to look, and I didn't do that ahead of time, at what the retention record is right now for
Yeah.
these, and I think it's very minimal. I think it is 30 days.
Really?
I believe it's
For
Brown
the
Act, or part of
audio,
Brown Act.
right? The audio
30
recordings we have, it's very minimal.
Right.
We happen to have, I've seen at least, I have access to them back to 2008.
No, the minute,
And
we're
I-
talking about the video recording.
Video.
Right. The audio recordings we have through 2008.
Oh, do you really?
Yes, we do.
That's
There may be more, but that's what I've seen. The others, I believe, are on a cassette tape, which I'm not sure the condition of those.
The videos are up since we started.
But the videos are
January.
of January. We don't have the January 20.
I know with this one. Okay. that's okay.
But we have all the others, and they're YouTube, so we could keep those links, and as long as
why
YouTube
not?
keeps the links, we'll have them. And I think
So
that's
any
probably
district
forever.
recording may not be erased or, I mean, that's what I'm saying is, this is allowing us to get rid of it after 30 days, and I don't want to allow that. So how do we word this?
I agree with that. The converse of that is, are we requiring the district to keep them forever?
Maybe something more intermediate, like a year.
Yeah.
So district
This is
recording
permissive.
shall
It
be.
doesn't say they have to.
say-
This is May.
I know, but what I'm saying is I don't want them to be.
Right, I want
May
them
is
to
not
be
a
30
retained.
days at least
So-
is not long enough.
So, as far as I know, with this, electronic world, you can access them, as long as YouTube has them on their site, you can access them forever. How long do you want to see them on our website?
Well, I guess the only thing we're saying is that we don't want them to be destroyed for at least a year. Is that?
But if they're, but do we want them maintained on our website for a year?
I don't think that's part of this, is it?
That would be my question.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's some practical things that we're actually just doing.
Right.
And then there's a more formal approach. Right, as Kathy just said, the stuff that's on YouTube it's out there, so.
Yeah, but that's our site, and it's the
Yeah.
district's.
They link to
site.
YouTube.
I think a year's a good time.
So if we had a public records request for a copy of a video, how long would we how far back would we be required to have that?
1 year.
Well, but if you're just loading up YouTube,
Someone could seek it on their
you
own.
could send them the link, they could get it on their own. And we don't have to produce this through a public records request if we've actually already destroyed the documents. But I think...
I'm going to take that out of context for the next election.
Just don't ask for my email. A minimum year, I agree. I would like to see it as long as possible.
So can we get back?
But perpetuity
to the
seems
word
like
how it works?
forever.
I think a year.
Any district reporting may not be erased or destroyed.
I agree with that. I agree with Mike.
It must be retained for at least 12 months after the meeting.
I haven't.
I'm okay with that. Any objection? Okay.
As long as there's an understanding that that's a minimum and that we would like it to be as long as possible.
Right, that there's no reason to get rid of it.
Right.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very well done. Very
It's
well.
never completely easy, but this is how government works, right?
Seems boring most of the time, but we kind of get into it.
That's right. Superintendent's report.
Well, I'll say what I have tended to say over the last couple of months. I try to tailor my comments to the time of the meeting. We do have a closed session after this. It's the last day of the year. We get a little bit nostalgic when that happens. So we turn the page for next year. We have a lot of wonderful people who are leaving us, retiring, and moving on to other parts of their lives. We wish them the best. You can see, I think the segue is perfect. You can see in 8.1.1, most of, but not all, of the new staff. And I will give you a report for the August meeting, because in the summer, we fill out the classified staff hiring better than before June 30th. So there'll be positions filled during the course of the summer, and some more teachers I know we've hired in addition to these. I'm going to send you, in fact, a whole portrayal of where our people work. Right, so you'll see names, schools, jobs, the whole thing. I think it's a good time to do that. And so I guess my report is I'm wishing those who leave us the absolute best, and I'm really looking forward. I met every one of these people, at least for a few minutes when they came into the office, and I think you're going to be really excited about the work that they're doing. We have a much higher number of new staff next year than we typically have, in part because of the incentive that we provided. And that was great for those people for whom it worked. I'm excited for them. We have no administrative changes next year. We had a huge one a couple of months ago with Andy coming, and you've seen the impact of that. Look back on the previous year at the administrative level with Cheryl Knox coming to Copatoba. She did a wonderful job. We're thrilled to have her. And I just, more than anything else, I was telling Sarah, my wife, yesterday, I'm just so looking forward to July 1st, 2015, because it is the first day of a very different year for staff, students, and parents in this district, which is what I was trying to convey to Claudia Merritt when she wrote the article, that finally, we're going to have a much more typical, for our county colleagues, typical school year, for our staff, typical, albeit we're still at the mercy of Sacramento funding, but at least for 12 months, we can look at a very bright horizon. And I'm very, very much looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. Are there items for future agendas? Okay. All right, then there's our consent calendar. If there are comments or questions, otherwise we could move to approve.
The only thing I want to be sure you got, my apologies for forgetting to do this on Friday. I sent you an email, let's see, about almost 5.5 hours ago. Kevin, this is a response to your question about the auction, okay? So this is a bit of a rendition here from Josh as to what he expects we might be able to garner and the process that we'll be going through.
could you ask him to keep us informed?
Sure, absolutely.
Let's find something
Yeah,
to touch
yeah,
base.
you bet, absolutely. Andy will do that.
If anyone wants to spend a lot of money on a bus,
And speaking of bus, come on.
yeah,
You need to take credit for this great idea.
We need to make an announcement that for the first time in, well, a long time, as long as I can remember, we're going to be involved in the 4th of July parade.
We're going to cut this out and put it at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, so, yeah, please. So we're going to have a bus. The school board is going to walk with the bus, and we'll invite members of our school community and students to join in. So we'd be more than happy to have, anyone who wants to participate. And we're really excited about it. I think it's a great opportunity for us to thank the community for the great support of Measure J and support of education generally in our valley. And I think that I think we don't thank the community enough, and I think sometimes while people go to school and they see the schools, we're not right out in front of the community as much as we potentially could be. And I think that I love our 4th of July parade. I think, it's classic, small town America, and it's fantastic. And, thanks to all the volunteers and everyone who works on it. So we're looking forward to the 4th of July.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's see. We need a vote on the consent agenda.
That's it.
I move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, we will now close our meeting. The board will be adjourning to a closed session for a performance evaluation for the superintendent.